Hey there, creepy crew. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Most viewers still aren't subscribed. And if you already are, thank you so much. Drop a like and leave a comment. I live in a small college town where people drive old sedans and hang out at 24-hour diners. Nothing fancy happens here. I study full-time and live a pretty regular student life. Coffee in hand, books stacked up on my desk, always behind on readings. One Thursday afternoon after class, my friend Sarah convinced me to download a dating app. She said I needed a distraction, something to cut the monotony of lectures and exams. I wasn't really into that kind of thing, but I gave in. I matched with this guy named Shane. He looked clean, had a confident smile, nothing flashy. His messages were short but funny. He made jokes about traffic and college life, and there was a sarcastic edge to everything he said. It felt like he was testing how I'd respond, like he wanted to see if I'd get his humor. I didn't mind. We started talking regularly. A week later, we met up at a roadside coffee place near campus. It wasn't busy, just a couple truckers and an older couple playing cards. He ordered a black coffee. I got a chai. We sat outside near the parking lot, the sound of cars passing on the main road in the background. Our conversation lasted almost 2 hours. He talked about a show we both liked, about how terrible the last season was, and we laughed about fan theories. He seemed curious about my classes, asked about my favorite professors. Nothing about him felt off. Just a guy who asked a lot of questions and kept eye contact a bit longer than usual. I figured he was just into deep conversations. After that, we started meeting up after classes. Nothing too serious. Maybe a walk around the park or grabbing a sandwich from a food truck. Over the next couple of weeks, we hung out maybe 5 or 6 times. Always short meetups, always in public. He'd message me about something random, some meme or article, and then suggest we grab something quick. It was convenient, not too intense. He told me he worked remotely doing some kind of data work, but I never asked too much. I liked that he wasn't overly pushy, at least in the beginning. If I said I had too much homework, he'd just say, "All right, next time." And that was that. Then I started noticing small things. They didn't seem important at first. Like how he asked about people I mentioned. My roommate, classmates, even the guy who sold us coffee once. He'd repeat their names, ask what they were like, whether I trusted them. Sometimes it sounded like a joke. "You sure your lab partner's not a weirdo?" he'd say, half laughing. But the way he said it was different. His tone would drop a little, and his eyes would narrow, like he was actually trying to figure out something. He also brought up strange ideas in casual conversation, like how the government watches through phone mics, or how major companies are run by the same 5 families. He said this stuff with a smirk, like he didn't fully believe it himself. One time, he leaned closer and said, "They control more than you think. Everything." I laughed, thought it was just one of those ironic internet things. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't want to seem uptight, so I brushed it off. Then something happened that I couldn't ignore. A girl I know from my literature class, Melissa, pulled me aside after lecture. She said she'd seen Shane in her building a few nights ago. He was on the stairs, talking to himself, or yelling, actually. She said he was saying something about keeping the message clean, and "they're not listening." She said it looked like he was practicing for a play or something, but it creeped her out. Her words were, "He was too into it." I tried to laugh it off and said maybe he was just messing around. Melissa tends to exaggerate, but it stuck with me. I kept thinking about it. After that, I paid closer attention. When we texted, I noticed he messaged me every couple of hours, sometimes even more. "Where you at? What class now? You going to that library spot again?" At first, I replied because it seemed like normal conversation. But he always followed up with more questions, even when I gave short answers. One day I told him I'd be busy the whole evening, just to have some space. He still texted me 4 times. Just checking. You home yet? Want to grab something later? I started to feel uneasy. Like it wasn't just interest anymore. It felt more like he was keeping tabs. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I kept telling myself he was just awkward or overenthusiastic. But I stopped suggesting meetups. He didn't. He kept offering. Want to walk down to the river spot? Let's get fries at Sam's. I'm near your place. Want to say hi? I made excuses, said I had group work or family stuff. He'd always respond politely but then ask again a few hours later. One night, I saw him standing across the street from my apartment. One evening, he messaged me saying we had to talk. He said it couldn't wait, that it was extremely important, and he needed me to hear him out. At first, I told him I was tired and had work to do, but he kept pushing. The way he worded it, it sounded desperate. He said things were getting worse and people were watching us. I didn't want to go to his place, so I said we could meet at the park where we usually walked. It was public, well lit, and I figured if things got too weird, I could just leave. He was already waiting when I got there, standing near the bench where we usually sat. His hands were stuffed in his jacket pockets, and he didn't say hi. Just looked around like he was checking if anyone followed me. When I asked what was going on, he launched straight into it, talking about how people around us weren't who they seemed, how everything was connected, and how something terrible was coming. He looked at me like he needed me to understand, said we had to protect ourselves, and that I had to take it seriously. I tried to change the subject, said I'd had a long day and didn't really want to get into conspiracy stuff. That seemed to set him off. He started pacing, saying I wasn't listening, that everyone always ignores the signs. He raised his voice a little, not shouting, but it was sharp. I told him I had to go. He just stared for a second, then nodded without saying anything. I walked away fast and didn't look back. After that, I decided I couldn't keep pretending it was harmless. I stopped answering his messages. He kept sending them anyway. Long texts, some of them several paragraphs. He talked about truth, about how I'd wake up soon, and how I was still in danger. I felt my stomach knot every time my phone buzzed. Eventually, I blocked him. It felt like the only way to breathe again. Even then, I kept hearing things. A classmate told me they saw him near the campus bookstore talking to himself. Another girl said she got weird vibes from him when they'd been in the same study group weeks earlier. No one knew him well, but everyone had a weird story. It wasn't comforting. It made it worse, like I should have seen more than I did. A few days later, I was scrolling through local news on my phone during lunch when I saw his name. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw his photo. It was him. The headline said he'd been arrested after holding a family member hostage with a knife. The article said he'd tried to force them to admit the truth about the world. My hands were shaking. I put the phone down and just stared at the table. I didn't want to believe it, but it explained everything. The urgency, the paranoia, the way he looked at people like he was sizing them up for something they didn't know about. Apparently, his cousin had managed to text 911 while he was ranting. The police came fast and talked him down before anyone was hurt. They said he surrendered quietly once they convinced him they were on his side. The whole town buzzed after that. Everyone had something to say. People who'd seen him around, professors who remembered him from class, even the guy from the coffee truck. I remembered those pauses in his speech, those strange silences when we'd talk. How he'd suddenly stop mid-sentence and just watch people pass by. I always assumed he was tired or distracted. I never imagined it was anything more. For a few days, my phone blew up. Friends, classmates, Even people I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me. "Isn't this the guy you were seeing? Were you safe? Are you okay?" I turned off notifications. I couldn't answer the questions. I didn't want to think about what might have happened if I'd kept meeting up with him. I deleted the dating app. It was the first thing I did after the news broke. Then I changed my number. I didn't want to take any chances in case he somehow found a way to reach out. I told my mom everything. She was quiet for a long time, then told me to talk to someone at school. I booked a session with the campus therapist, even though I wasn't sure what I'd say. Talking helped more than I expected. The counselor didn't ask me to explain everything, just helped me go over what happened step by step. She said sometimes our minds pick up on danger before we understand it logically. That I wasn't wrong for missing the signs. That people like him don't always look dangerous. I started to understand that just because someone acts normal doesn't mean they are. That surface-level charm can hide something deeper. I stopped blaming myself for not walking away sooner. I didn't do anything wrong by giving someone the benefit of the doubt. But I also learned that I don't have to wait until I'm scared to set a boundary. If something feels off, I can step away. No apology needed. It's been a few months now. I've started spending time with people again, going out in groups, staying cautious but not closed off. I don't bring it up unless someone asks, and even then I keep it brief. We went out a few times. Then things got weird. I got out. Even now, sometimes I catch myself watching people a little longer than I used to, waiting to see if something shifts in their expression, in their tone. It's not fear exactly. It's more like a habit. I know I'm more careful now. I don't ignore the small signs. It still doesn't fully make sense to me. How someone who laughed at dumb jokes and shared music recommendations could reach a point like that. But I've stopped trying to explain it. I just remember how close it got. That's enough. My name is Ashley. I'm a professional photographer, mostly portraits and lifestyle shoots. I've always liked catching people in natural, unplanned angles. It tells more of a story than any posed picture ever could. I live in a hot, sunny city where sunglasses aren't just fashion, they're survival gear. Everyone has AC units running 24/7, and the pavement burns if you step on it barefoot. It's the kind of place where life feels slow, but people still rush. After a long break from dating, I decided to try one of those apps again. Not with any big expectations. I just wanted to meet new people, maybe spark something real, or just expand my circle. I matched with a guy named Roy. His profile stood out immediately. The photos looked like magazine spreads, perfect lighting, sharp angles, not a single awkward pose. Either he had a great photographer, or he knew exactly how to present himself. He wrote that he worked in PR and loved traveling, meeting new people, opening the world together, as he put it. That line sounded a bit rehearsed, but I let it go. I figured someone in PR probably talked like that for a living. We decided to meet in a park near a big circular fountain, the kind where kids run through the spray during summer. It was late afternoon. The light was soft, golden, perfect for shooting actually. Roy showed up in a tailored beige suit, expensive loafers, a slim leather bag slung over one shoulder. The guy looked like he walked straight off a runway. He smiled like he was used to getting his way, but his manner wasn't pushy. He was smooth, talked about his clients, recent trips, collaborations with designers. Every now and then, he'd casually mention how he just loved connecting with creatives and finding ways to build something bigger than both people involved. It sounded vague, but he delivered it with confidence. I mentioned my studio and my current projects. He nodded like he was already planning a full campaign. It felt a bit fast, but his energy was contagious. He told me he always wanted fresh visuals for his brand, something natural but sharp, nothing fake. I said maybe we could try a test shoot. He lit up at that, like I'd just offered him a free ticket somewhere. I gave him the address and we agreed on Thursday afternoon. Thursday came fast. I prepped the studio in the morning, cleared out some backdrops, set up soft boxes. It's a compact space above an old bookstore downtown. Tight staircase, squeaky wooden floor, but it gets the job done. Roy showed up exactly on time, again dressed to kill. Slim dark jeans, white shirt, no wrinkles. He smelled like some designer cologne I couldn't name but definitely recognized. He walked around the studio like he'd been in dozens just like it. No questions, no hesitation. "Let's make something clean," he said, flashing his perfect teeth. I started with a neutral gray background. His poses were natural, like he'd done this 1,000 times. A few times I didn't even have to direct him. He changed expressions effortlessly. Every few frames, smiling, serious, playful. He made jokes between shots, asked about the equipment, commented on my lenses, complimented my lighting. He said he had some ideas for campaigns he wanted to pitch, and maybe I could be part of them. I didn't take it too seriously, but it was flattering. I hadn't had many collaborations like that since the pandemic hit. After the shoot, I went through the files and picked out a few of the best ones, cropped, adjusted colors, and shared a couple on my Instagram story, tagging him. Nothing big, just a little promo. His following was decent, around 15K, and he reposted them with a bunch of flame emojis and captions like "magic in motion" and "fresh perspective." It boosted my visibility, which I appreciated. Then things started getting strange. It began with a DM late that night. A woman I didn't know sent me a message. No hello, no intro. Just, "Be careful with Roy." I replied asking what she meant, and she sent a longer message. Said he'd been living in her apartment for almost 3 months. That he was supposed to move out tomorrow, but kept making excuses. Every time she brought it up, he'd charm his way around it. She said he'd also promised to help her with a marketing project and never followed through. That caught my attention. Another woman messaged the next day. Similar story. Different city. Same pattern. They met through the app. He talked about big plans, took some nice pictures, even showed up at her shoots offering advice. She said he stayed with her for a while, between leases, but never left. Claimed his place was getting fumigated. Eventually, she asked him to go, and he got passive-aggressive, telling her she was blocking his creative process. I didn't respond to that one immediately. Just sat with it. I went back through our messages, our meeting spot, the way he looked around my studio like he was evaluating its usefulness more than admiring it. I started noticing things I hadn't clocked at first, how he always made vague references, never gave concrete details. He never said where he lived exactly. Said things like, "on the east side," or "just outside the city." I never asked because at the time it didn't seem weird. Another woman sent me screenshots of their chats. They looked nearly identical to mine. Same phrases, same energy. That "open the world together" line popped up again. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't confront him. I just stopped replying. A few hours later, he texted, "Had a great time at the shoot. Want to brainstorm more ideas this weekend?" I didn't answer. Then he messaged again. "Can I come by? I have something I want to show you. Won't take long." I started doing a bit of digging. Nothing too intense at first, just curiosity. But the more I looked, the more I found. I reached out to the 2 girls who had messaged me earlier. They were open to talk. We ended up having a video call one evening, and what they shared made everything click into place. Both of them said the same thing. Roy always left something behind. A duffel bag, A pair of designer shoes, a camera lens, something that made it feel like he had a reason to come back. He never stole money outright, but over time, he started living like the apartment was his, using their kitchens like they were stocked for him. Long showers. Borrowing the car, just for a quick errand. One of them said he had even invited people over to her place without asking, claiming it was a good networking opportunity. They both described the same routine. At first, he seemed helpful, interested, invested. Then came the stories. How his last job had delayed payment, how his apartment lease had fallen through, how his bank messed up a transfer. Always temporary, always fixable, soon. But it never was. He leaned hard on pity, without asking for money directly. Just enough to make them feel guilty for questioning him. One girl said he used to sit on her couch and scroll job listings while drinking the coffee she bought. He'd sigh and say things like, "I just need one break, one person to believe in me." It sounded sweet at first, then exhausting. I sat in silence after the call ended. I felt stupid, to be honest. Not just for letting him in, but for almost inviting him deeper into my life. He had used the same smile, the same words, the same promises. Nothing about it was personal, just a method, a strategy. I thought back to our shoot. He wasn't just relaxed, he was scanning. Measuring the space, testing my boundaries. I'd felt flattered by his attention. That attention was his tool. I wasn't the only one. Probably not even the last one. I felt angry. Not just at him, but at myself. The photos, the compliments, the excitement. It was all part of the setup. He didn't need money. He needed hosts, sponsors, people to carry the weight of his lifestyle while he kept selling this image of success. That's when I realized he'd probably already started planning his next move. Maybe even had a couple more people on the hook. I canceled all upcoming shoots. Took a day to clean out my studio, delete a few shared posts, and block his number. Then I messaged Roy. I told him I wanted to talk. One last time. Somewhere public. We met at a cafe near the main boulevard. Busy. Open place with big windows and noise. I picked a table near the door. He walked in wearing a charcoal blazer, like he'd come straight from a job interview. Smiling like nothing had changed. "Hey, good to see you again," he said, sitting down fast like we were on a schedule. I didn't smile back. I just looked at him and said, "I know what you're doing." His smile flickered, then came back, weaker this time. "Doing what?" I didn't explain. I told him I wasn't interested in arguments, just facts. I mentioned the other women, their messages, the things he left behind, the stories he told. He shook his head and leaned forward. "They're obsessed," he said. "You don't know them like I do. They twist things." I stayed quiet. He kept going, said I was being unfair, that he thought we had a real connection, that maybe the others misread him, but that didn't mean I had to jump on some hate train. He was calm, but I saw the panic behind it. His voice tightened. His hands started tapping the table. I told him I wasn't here to debate. I said I knew about the way he stayed with people without paying rent, how he took advantage of their spaces. I said I knew about the third girl too. That's when he dropped the act. His posture sank. He didn't try to defend anymore. Just stared past me for a moment, then stood up without a word. Walked out. I followed him with my eyes as he got into a silver sedan, slammed the door, and peeled off without looking back. That was the last time I saw him. I felt a mix of relief and something else. Not sadness, not really. Just the weight of being so close to falling into something that could have drained me. Not just financially, but mentally. It took me days to stop replaying everything he said, wondering how much of it was real. Probably none of it. I reached out to a couple friends who work in legal stuff, Asked if anything he did was illegal, if there was a way to press charges. But without theft, physical abuse, or signed contracts, it was a dead end. He never forced anyone. He just nudged, suggested, took space until it felt normal. All I could do was leave warnings. I wrote anonymous posts on local boards and in groups where creatives gather. Shared what happened, left out names, just described the pattern. A few people reached out to thank me, said they'd seen someone similar. I deactivated my dating profile not long after. I just didn't want to be out there again. Not right away. I needed space to get my head right. I kept thinking about how I'd fallen for the image. His looks, his words, the feeling of being chosen. I didn't want to admit it, but I'd wanted someone impressive, someone polished. I ignored the small signs because I liked the way it felt. The other girls told me it took them weeks, even months to recover. Not from losing him, but from doubting themselves, from feeling used, from trying to explain it to people who didn't get how it worked. I don't blame myself now, not fully. I see what happened. I see how easy it is to trust someone who says all the right things and looks like they mean it. Now I double-check everything. I don't get swept up in compliments or visions of big futures. If someone makes big promises too early, I pause. And I watch their actions. Not their smiles, not their Instagram. Just what they do, day by day. Sometimes, the most polished surface hides someone who never plans to carry their own weight. My name is Rick, and I work at an auto repair shop where most days blend into each other. Oil-stained rags, rattling tools, the sharp hiss of compressed air. I've been at it for years, and honestly, it's not a bad way to pass time. You don't have to think too much. After my last relationship crashed and burned, that kind of mindless routine felt like the only thing keeping me steady. My ex cheated on me. I found the messages on her phone one night while she was in the shower. I didn't yell, didn't throw things, just left. And for a while, I didn't talk to anyone. A couple of months later, I gave in and downloaded a dating app. I wasn't looking for anything serious. I told myself I was just bored. Maybe I wanted to feel like I mattered again. I started swiping, talking to a few women here and there. Nothing deep. I wasn't proud of it, but at the time, I didn't care. I thought I deserved a break, something light. No strings, no promises. That's when I started chatting with Kelly. She wasn't like the others. No selfies with filters, no weird bios full of quotes. She had one picture, sitting at a bus stop with a coffee, not even looking at the camera. She said she didn't like her photo being taken. In her messages, she was calm, kind of quiet, and opened up faster than I expected. She told me her childhood was rough. Absent father, mom always working nights. Said she didn't have a lot of close friends. I listened, or at least pretended to. I sent her polite replies, kept it friendly but distant. At the same time, I was chatting with 3, maybe 4 other women. I never lied. I just didn't say I was talking to anyone else. I didn't want to be tied down. I kept things vague, and when someone got too close, I usually slowed things down until it faded out. But with Kelly, it didn't fade. She wanted to meet up. I figured, why not? We got coffee near my place. She was quieter in person. She barely touched her drink and kept looking around like she was expecting someone to show up. After that, she texted more often. I told myself I'd talk to her a bit, then ease off. But every time I tried to distance myself, she'd say something that pulled me back, like she had no one else. At first, she was just someone I messaged between shifts. Then she started getting upset when I didn't reply quickly. Once, I was under a car working on a busted transmission. My phone was in my locker. When I checked it 2 hours later, there were 10 messages from her. Are you mad at me? Did I say something wrong? Just tell me if you don't want to talk anymore. Stuff like that. I brushed it off, said I was busy. She apologized, said she had trouble trusting people, that her last boyfriend ghosted her after 6 months. I didn't say much, just something like, yeah, that sucks, and changed the topic. I wasn't ready to deal with someone else's emotional weight. I wasn't even dealing with my own. Then things got weird. She came by the shop once. I hadn't told her where I worked, but I guess she figured it out. Maybe I'd mentioned the name without thinking. She stood by the front entrance, holding a small bag of donuts. Said she was just in the area and thought I might be hungry. The guys in the shop gave me a few looks, but I laughed it off. Took the bag, said thanks, and told her I had to get back to work. A week later, she was waiting by my truck in the lot behind the shop. I'd just finished closing up, and there she was, sitting on the curb. She smiled and stood up like it was normal. I asked her how long she'd been there, and she said, "Not long." I didn't press it. We talked for 5 minutes. She asked what I was doing that night. I lied and said I was going home to sleep. Really, I had a date lined up with someone else, Maria, a girl I'd been seeing on and off. Kelly just nodded and said, "Okay, talk to you later." That night, while I was walking Maria to her car, I kept looking over my shoulder. It kept happening. Random drop-ins. She'd show up near the shop or outside the gym I go to twice a week. Once, she was at the gas station across from my apartment, pretending not to see me while I filled up my tank. I didn't say anything. I just drove off. I told myself it was harmless. Maybe she was just lonely. Maybe she didn't mean anything by it. But I started changing my habits, leaving work at different times, parking on different streets, switching gyms. I blocked her number for a few days, but then she emailed me, said she was sorry if she came on too strong, that she just really liked me and didn't want to mess it up. I unblocked her, sent a short message back. "It's fine, just need some space." She replied, "Okay." But she didn't give me space. I started seeing Maria more often. She was normal, easy to talk to, fun. One Saturday we were at a small diner just outside town, and I spotted a silver car parked across the street. Nothing weird about the car itself, just that it had the same dent in the passenger side door I remembered from when Kelly once asked me to help her fix a minor scrape. I didn't say anything to Maria, but I kept watching the car. After 15 minutes, it drove off. Back at the shop, one of the guys said, "Hey, your girlfriend was here again." He was joking, but I asked what he meant. He said she came by looking for me, said she brought lunch. I hadn't told her I'd be working that day. I texted her later, and she said she thought it'd be a nice surprise. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I caught her standing behind the building, near where we keep the old tires. One night, I got home late after a quiet dinner with Maria. I parked down the block and walked up the short path to my apartment. The porch light was off. As I fumbled for my keys, I noticed someone standing by the door. It was Kelly. She didn't say anything at first, just stared. Her arms were crossed, and she wasn't dressed like someone just passing by. She looked like she'd been standing there a while. I hadn't given her my address. I never even said what part of town I lived in. "Where were you?" she asked. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but her eyes didn't blink. I waited. I didn't answer right away. I was frozen. She stepped closer, her face in the glow from a nearby window. She looked tired, messy hair, makeup smudged. But there was something else in her eyes, something cold and sharp. "I was out," I said, keeping my voice even. You can't just show up here. She didn't move. Just stood there, breathing slowly, like she was trying not to explode. I thought we were real, she said. I thought you were different. I didn't reply. I slowly reached for the doorknob, and that's when she finally turned and walked away, but not before muttering, "You'll see." The next day, around noon, I got a call from Maria. She was yelling, panicked. "Some woman is here. She's screaming outside my house." I dropped everything and ran to my truck. It took me less than 15 minutes to get there. When I pulled up, Kelly was already on Maria's porch, pounding on the door. In her right hand, she held what looked like a heavy metal bar, maybe a crowbar. Her other hand was clenched in a fist. Maria had locked the door, thank God, but I could hear her shouting from inside. I jumped out of the truck and ran to the porch. "Kelly, stop!" She turned and looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Her face was red, her jaw clenched. "You told her lies," she said. "You made me look crazy." I held out my hands. "Let's talk, but not here. Please. Let's go." She took a step back, and that's when I noticed the back seat of her car. Through the rear window, I saw a red gas can and a long zipped case. It looked like the kind hunters use for rifles. My mouth went dry. "Kelly," I said again, quieter. "Please, let's go somewhere else." She didn't move, just stared at the door like she wanted to smash it open. Then she swung the bar at the wood, and it cracked with a loud thud. Maria screamed again from inside. I lunged forward and grabbed Kelly's arm. "Stop!" She yanked away and turned the bar toward me. Didn't swing it, just held it in front of her chest like a warning. Her breathing was fast now, uneven. "You're just like him," she hissed. "All of you." I backed away slowly, trying not to escalate it. We stood there for maybe 10 seconds, neither of us moving. Then a door across the street opened and someone shouted, "Hey, what's going on?" I glanced over and saw an older guy on the phone, probably calling the cops. Kelly saw him too. She turned and ran to her car, threw the door open, and peeled out of the driveway. I didn't chase her. I just stood there, watching the taillights disappear. When the police showed up, I gave them everything. Her name, the messages, what I'd seen in her car. I tried to explain how it had all started, but the whole thing sounded surreal when I said it out loud. Maria was shaking, still locked inside. She didn't want to come out. I didn't blame her. That night, I deleted all my social media accounts, every dating app. Changed my phone number. I stopped going out after dark. I'd sit in my apartment with the lights off, listening for cars pulling up, for footsteps outside the door. For a while, I didn't sleep more than a couple hours a night. Weeks passed. Then a month. I didn't hear from Kelly again. I packed up and moved to a different part of the city. New place, new job, smaller shop. Fewer people, more privacy. I needed a fresh start, somewhere I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. There were nights I'd think about it all, how careless I'd been. I didn't know Kelly, not really. I knew a few facts, a few sad stories, but I didn't try to understand her. I just wanted attention, and when it got too heavy, I tried to back out like it was nothing. What she did wasn't okay. It was dangerous. But I still think about that look in her eyes, the way she talked about being abandoned, the way she'd show up out of nowhere, always alone. A friend of mine told me to see someone, a therapist. At first I brushed it off, but eventually I went. I sat down, told the whole story. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to pretend I was fine. I'm still working on myself, trying to understand why I acted the way I did, why I let it all go on for so long. I don't date anymore. Not for now. I want to learn how to be real with people, to stop running from things just because they're uncomfortable. I hope Kelly finds help too. I hope someone steps in and sees through her anger and fear. Because underneath it all, I think there's just someone who got broken one too many times. Someone who didn't know where else to put the pain. I still remember the sound of that metal bar hitting Maria's door. The crack it made. The way everything slowed down for a second. Like a warning shot I almost didn't hear in time. Now, I do everything I can to make sure I never ignore signs like that again. My name is Lauren. I teach English at a local community college and spend most of my free time reading. It's not just a hobby for me. Literature is something I've always felt connected to. I live in a modest apartment complex in a quiet neighborhood. Every Sunday, a few of the neighbors get together in the courtyard to barbecue. Nothing too fancy, just folding chairs, plastic plates, and music playing from someone's speaker. It's usually nice background noise when I'm grading papers or reading on the balcony. After another failed attempt at meeting someone through a friend, awkward small talk, zero chemistry, I ended up back on the dating app I always seem to return to. It's the one I've used off and on for years. I wasn't expecting much this time. Just figured I'd see if anyone interesting was out there. That's when Thomas messaged me. He had a profile picture holding a book. Something by Murakami, I think. He introduced himself as a fellow book lover. Someone who liked quiet nights and meaningful conversations. He told me he worked with kids, helping them improve their reading and writing. Said it was more rewarding than anything else he'd done. His messages were thoughtful, not just quick "hey" or "how are you" types. He asked about my favorite authors, told me he'd read a few of the same books I liked, and even quoted a line from one of them in a way that felt natural, not like he was trying too hard. We messaged constantly, sometimes all day in between my classes. It felt easy. I started to look forward to hearing from him. When we finally decided to meet, we picked a small independent bookstore downtown. I got there first and waited near the poetry section. He showed up right on time, wearing a gray sweater and glasses. He looked just like his photos, maybe a little taller. He smiled as soon as he saw me and said, "I've always wanted to meet someone who sees stories the same way I do." It didn't feel like a line. We walked around the bookstore for a while, pointing out books we loved, recommending new ones to each other. He bought a copy of something I mentioned loving in high school. We got coffee afterward and sat outside, talking until the place closed. Things continued from there. He texted me the next day and every day after. We met again a few days later, this time for lunch. He was just as easy to talk to in person. He mentioned again that he taught teens, mostly one-on-one sessions. Said some kids just needed more attention than they got in school. Then he showed me a short video on his phone, him sitting with one of his students. The kid looked about 13 or 14, thin, short hair, sitting stiffly at a desk while Thomas spoke behind the camera. The boy didn't say much, just nodded a few times. There was something strange about the kid's face, though. His eyes kept shifting like he was looking for someone off screen, and he seemed tense. Not just uncomfortable, more like alert. Like he was scared. I asked Thomas why the kid seemed so nervous. He chuckled a little and said, "He's just shy around cameras, doesn't like being recorded." Then he changed the subject, started talking about how we should go on a weekend trip soon. Said he knew a place about 2 hours out of town with great views, quiet trails, and no cell reception. Perfect for a real disconnect, he called it. I didn't answer right away. Something about the video unsettled me. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions or offend him. He'd always been respectful with me, and there hadn't been any other red flags. So I just smiled and said, "Maybe. hoping it would buy me time. He didn't press. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that kid's face. There was no name, no school mentioned, just the boy sitting there like he was waiting for something to happen. I started wondering why Thomas was filming in the first place. He hadn't said it was for school or for the parents, just casually showed it to me like it was normal. And it wasn't. The next morning, I opened my laptop and tried to look him up. I figured if he really worked with kids, there'd be something. A LinkedIn page, a tutoring service, a review somewhere. I found nothing. Not a single profile on any of the usual platforms. When I asked him once before if he had social media, he just said, "I don't like public pages. Too many people digging into your life." At the time, it sounded reasonable. Now it felt like he was hiding something. Still, when I texted him later, he replied right away, same as always. Friendly, casual. Like nothing had changed. I decided to try contacting one of the parents Thomas had supposedly tutored. He once mentioned a last name during one of our long conversations, just in passing, talking about a bright kid he was helping. I remembered it because it was unusual. I searched the local parent group on Facebook and sent a private message to someone with that last name, explaining I might have a few questions about a tutor they might know. I wasn't sure she'd reply. A few hours later, I got a message back from a woman named Carla. She said she hadn't seen Thomas in months. She told me they stopped working with him after he started acting strangely, missing sessions, showing up late, and once even showing up unannounced at their house without texting first. She said her son didn't feel comfortable around him. When they decided to cut ties, Thomas became distant and then disappeared altogether. Her last message ended with, "Honestly, I thought we were just overthinking, but now you're asking too, and I'm starting to worry again." That was the moment it turned from unsettling to something darker. I asked if we could meet in person, and she agreed. We met at a cafe near my place the next day. Carla was direct. She said Thomas had always been polite, but something always felt a little off. He avoided details about his background, never spoke about family or where he went to school. Her son had once told her that during lessons, Thomas asked strange personal questions, not related to schoolwork. After that, she decided to end it. Meanwhile, Thomas kept messaging me like nothing was happening. "Hope your class went well today. I just found a great quote to show you later. Still thinking about that hike, we should plan it soon." His tone hadn't changed, but every message now felt calculated, like he was trying to keep control of the story. I started replying less, shorter answers. I told my friend Michelle everything, and she said I should go to the police. But I didn't have anything concrete, just a weird video and a bad feeling. No evidence. Nothing that would hold up if he decided to turn it on me. 2 weeks later, local news started spreading fast. The police had arrested Thomas. Not for something small either. It was serious. He was suspected of multiple offenses involving minors. The charges weren't just new. Turns out he was already wanted in another state, under a different name. The Thomas I knew wasn't even real. He'd used fake documents and built this whole identity as a tutor. Nobody around here had a clue. They said he moved around a lot, never stayed in one city more than a year. He was always careful, always polite. Picked jobs where he could stay under the radar. When I read the article, I dropped my phone. I sat on the floor for a long time, trying to remember if I'd missed something obvious. I had invited him into my apartment once, just for tea. We'd sat on my couch. I'd left him alone for a few minutes while getting a book. He'd seen my mail, my address, my schedule pinned on the fridge. I thought about how easily things could have gone differently. Later that night, I messaged Carla again. She told me she had warned a few others once she sensed something was off, and some of those parents had started comparing stories. It was them, not the police, who pushed for an investigation. That group of parents might have saved lives. When I scrolled through our old chats, I could see it clearly now. The way he avoided specifics, changed the subject when pressed, kept all the control. I just hadn't noticed it then. It wasn't just anger I felt. It was the knowledge that someone like him had been so close. I wasn't just tricked, I was studied. Everything I gave him, he used to shape the version of himself I'd fall for. Books, teaching, calm weekends. He knew exactly what to say. And I gave him everything he needed without even knowing. Right now, he's still under investigation. They're going through his devices, checking aliases, trying to reach people from other towns. It's a slow process. They say it might take months before trial even begins. I try not to read the updates too much. Every time his name comes up, my stomach turns. The guilt doesn't go away, not really. I keep thinking about how I let him in. How I sat across from him and smiled. How I ignored the feeling in my gut because I didn't want to seem rude or paranoid. Friends tell me I did nothing wrong. That someone like him could fool anyone. That he spent years building a perfect image. But those words don't help much when I think about how close it got. Now I barely use dating apps. If I do, I check everything. Reverse image search. Background searches if I can. It sounds paranoid, maybe. But I'd rather be paranoid than blind again. Looking back, the thing that saved me wasn't luck. It was noticing that one weird video. That kid's face. I couldn't explain what was wrong with it, but I didn't let it go. I kept asking. I pushed. And in the end, that was enough to pull me out of something that could have ended a lot worse. Sometimes I imagine what would have happened if I hadn't questioned anything. If I'd gone on that weekend trip. If I'd let him get closer. I think about what else he could have done with the trust I gave him. It scares me how normal he looked. How normal he acted. The most dangerous people aren't always the ones who yell or threaten. Sometimes they're the ones who smile, who listen, who pretend to love the same books you do. I hope my story helps someone else. Pay attention to the little things. Don't dismiss your instincts. And don't ever assume someone's safe just because they seem like they belong. The first time I got a message from him, I didn't think much of it. His profile looked odd. Only one blurry photo, no bio, just the name Jack, and a few vague interests. At first, I swiped left like usual, but his profile kept showing up again and again. I had just moved into a new apartment a few months before, small place on the 3rd floor with a view straight onto a noisy street and a minibus stop. I didn't know anyone in the area yet. Figured I'd try a dating app, maybe meet some locals, maybe even just get a few normal conversations going. Most people on the app were pretty typical. A few boring chats, some dead-end threads, and a few decent folks I talked to once or twice. But every time I scrolled, Jack's profile would pop up again. It wasn't just the lack of info. There was something off about the way he messaged. His first text came just a few hours after I matched with someone else, completely out of nowhere. "You looked tense today." That was it. No intro. I didn't respond. Next day, another message from Jack. "Why are you ignoring me?" I hadn't even accepted a match with him, and I was sure of it. I looked through the app's settings, tried to block or report him, but since we hadn't matched, there wasn't even an option for that. I figured maybe the algorithm was just being weird. I told myself it'd cycle him out soon if I didn't interact. Still, it kept showing up. Every time I logged in, Jack's profile would be in the first 5. Then the comments started getting more direct. "Nice shirt today," one said. I'd been wearing a red hoodie. "You really shouldn't walk home alone so late." I lived 2 blocks from a grocery store and usually went after work, around 9. That one made me pause. I didn't answer. Still didn't want to assume the worst. I locked the app for a bit, stopped opening it unless I was at home. Even then, I felt uneasy. One night I deleted the app altogether. I figured that'd be it. But 3 days later, I got a friend request on a social media account that I rarely used. Same name, Jack. No profile pic, no mutual friends. I declined it. Few minutes later, I got a message from a second account. This one did have a profile photo, just a close-up of some concrete steps. I opened the message, thinking maybe it was a bot. The message had my name. Emily, you look better in person. I hadn't used my real name on the dating app. That stopped me cold. I checked the account again. Still no mutuals and no info. I clicked over to my profile and scanned everything. It was mostly private. The only recent public photo was one from a party, except I didn't remember posting that one publicly. I checked the post settings. It wasn't on my page. Someone else must have tagged me. I scrolled through old posts from friends and finally found it. A group photo from about a month ago. I was near the edge of the frame, half turned, drink in hand. Not something anyone unfamiliar with me would notice. Then another message came in. Same account. You were dancing with that guy in the green shirt. He looked drunk. That was that night. That guy had been a friend of a friend. I barely remembered talking to him. My stomach twisted a little. I asked the friend who posted the photo to take it down and check the privacy settings on every account I had. Over the next day, Jack sent a series of messages. I didn't reply, just kept reading them as they came. I saw you last week by the bakery. You seem like someone who smiles just to be polite. You don't notice people watching you, do you? I tried to brush it off like maybe he was just trying to be edgy or deep or whatever some of these online guys think is interesting. I messaged back finally, just a short thing. Hey, I'm not really looking to meet anyone right now. Just wanted to be clear. I thought maybe if I said it directly, he'd back off. Instead, he doubled down. It's okay. I already know you. Saw you at the stop, but I didn't want to scare you. You looked cold. That was the day before. It had been raining, and I'd been waiting for the 3:17 bus for about 10 minutes without an umbrella. I looked down the street from my window. The stop was across from a grocery store and a small newspaper stand, right under a flickering streetlight. It wasn't exactly hidden, but I still didn't like the idea of someone standing there watching me without me noticing. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. It's a public place, and people pass by all the time. Still, I changed up my route to work the next morning. Instead of walking down along the main road to the stop, I cut through a side street and took a different line. It added 10 minutes, but I figured better safe than sorry. That night, though, he messaged again. You didn't take your usual route today. I agreed to meet him only because he insisted it would be casual, in public, and just a quick conversation. We can talk like normal people, no pressure, he wrote. Just 10 minutes. You'll see I'm not a weirdo. The spot he suggested was a big public parking lot near the main shopping center. Well lit, cameras, always people around. I figured if anything felt off, I could just leave. I didn't tell anyone I was going, but I kept my phone in my hand and stayed alert the whole drive. When I pulled in, I saw his car right away. It was older, beat up, with peeling paint on one side and dents like it had been through some rough handling. He was standing outside, leaning on the hood with both hands behind him, scanning the lot slowly. His face looked blank, but not relaxed, just still, like he was waiting for something. It hit me wrong immediately. I parked 2 rows back and didn't turn off the engine. I watched for a minute. He noticed me and raised his arm, waving slowly, then motioned with his hand like he wanted me to come over. No smile, no step forward, just that same cold look. I sat there with my fingers on the steering wheel. Something about how he stood there, not moving, not even pretending to act casual. It didn't sit right. I thought about the messages, the way he knew my routines, the way he found my photos. My gut said leave. I shifted into drive, turned the wheel, and pulled away without making eye contact. He didn't follow, didn't run toward me, just watched as I drove off, his head turning slightly as I passed. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, music still playing from when I pulled in. That night I went home and blocked every account I could find linked to him. I combed through my settings, turned all my profiles to private, removed old tagged photos, and even changed my username on 2 apps. I deleted the dating app for good. Still, the next morning, I had notifications from new accounts, some with random names, others that looked fake but familiar. He was clearly making new profiles to try and contact me. One message read, "We didn't even get to talk. That was rude." Another said, "You'll come around. We had a connection." I reported them all, but the support team didn't do much. Just the usual auto response about reviewing the report. A friend of mine who works in IT suggested I talk to someone about cybersecurity. She said people can get a scary amount of info from social media, even if your accounts are mostly private. I took her advice. The specialist I hired walked me through it all. He showed me how someone like Jack could trace my movements through geotags on old posts, even those from years ago. He pointed out how people I was tagged with had public profiles, and how even their comments or likes could be used to build a digital trail. Jack hadn't just found me, he had studied me. It wasn't hard once he had a starting point. That part shook me the most. I thought I'd been careful. I never posted my address, rarely used my full name, and kept most of my content limited to friends. But it didn't matter. If someone is determined enough, if they're willing to go deep into your history and connections, they'll find more than you think you've shared. The specialist helped me clean things up, remove geotags, change privacy settings, unlink my accounts from each other. I stopped using apps with location sharing altogether. I felt like I needed to disappear online just to feel normal again. For a while, I stopped posting anything. I told friends and family to avoid tagging me in photos, to not mention me by name, not even birthday posts. It felt extreme, but the idea of Jack still looking, still finding ways in, wouldn't let me relax. The final straw came when someone using a new account commented under a neighborhood group post, asking if Emily with the red hoodie still took the 317 bus. That was weeks after I'd changed my route. I didn't respond. I didn't even check the profile. I just blocked it, took a screenshot, and forwarded it to the admin of the group. Then I closed the app. After that, I slowly stepped away from everything online. I kept only one private account, no photos, no name, just so I could message close friends. I got used to being offline. It felt better, safer. I explained the situation to my relatives, and they understood. They stopped sharing anything with me in it. I didn't want to take any more chances. Eventually the messages stopped. Or maybe I just wasn't seeing them anymore. Either way, the silence helped. I still heard from people in the area that a man fitting Jack's vague descriptions sometimes posted cryptic comments in local forums. Things like, "Still waiting for a second chance," or "Not all connections should be cut." But I'd already learned not to check. I didn't want to give him even a view. Over time, I met new people the old way. Through work, neighbors, small community events. I kept it all low-key. No photos, no tags, no "let's connect online." Just normal conversations, in person, nothing more. It helped. Looking back, I know curiosity kept me in the situation longer than it should have. Part of me didn't want to overreact. I wanted to believe he was just awkward, just trying badly to talk. But that night in the parking lot made everything clear. If I had stepped out of the car, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe nothing. Or maybe something I wouldn't have walked away from. Now, when I walk down my street, I watch more carefully. I check behind me without thinking. And if I ever feel that strange pressure again, that quiet feeling that someone's watching, I trust it. I trust it completely. My name is Alexis. I work in marketing and live in a quiet, spread-out suburb where every second driveway has a pickup truck parked in it. It's the kind of place where the neighbors wave but never really talk, and the biggest excitement is when someone gets a new lawnmower. After a couple of rough dating experiences, I decided not to give up on the apps completely. I kept my expectations low, but figured I'd try once in a while. That's how I came across Martin. He didn't look like the guys I usually matched with. Less flashy, more clean-cut, like someone's older cousin who still says ma'am unironically. What caught my eye was how polite he was. He messaged first, asked normal questions, didn't start off weird. He seemed oddly formal, like he was skipping the casual chatting stage and getting straight to the point. I thought maybe he was just old school. In the first few days of texting, he told me a lot about himself. He said he worked in logistics, had moved back to town to be closer to family, and wanted to settle down. He was surprisingly open. He said he loved big families and hoped to have kids soon, but didn't want to waste time in a relationship that wouldn't go anywhere. At first, I found it kind of refreshing. He sounded like he knew what he wanted. I told myself, maybe I should stop being so picky and just see where it went. We agreed to meet at a local cafe that weekend. It was busy but not crowded. He got there before me, already seated near the window. He stood up when I walked in, which felt a bit formal, but I smiled and went with it. In person, Martin talked more than he had over text. He had a way of explaining things that felt almost like a presentation, very structured. He kept bringing up the future, but not in a romantic way. More like logistics. A stable household, long-term planning, efficient parenting. His phrases were strange, but not totally alarming. I felt a bit off, but brushed it off. Maybe he was just nervous. Toward the end of the meeting, he asked if I wanted to see him again. I hesitated, but agreed. Nothing felt dangerous. Just a little intense. The second time we met, we went for a walk in a public park. He brought coffee in a thermos and small paper cups. Again, he talked a lot. He asked if I had ever considered having children and what kind of role I imagined playing in a family. He asked if I believed in traditional roles, if I wanted to work after having kids. I joked that I'd probably still want to work at least part-time. He didn't laugh. He seemed to store every answer like he was collecting data. The questions got a bit personal, but I didn't see a clear reason to cut it short. He wasn't rude, just clinical, like I was being interviewed. On the third meeting, he invited me to his place. I said I'd rather stick to public places for now, so he offered to meet again at the same cafe. I got there a bit late and found him already waiting, looking more serious than before. We ordered tea this time, and before I even sat down properly, he said, "I'm just going to be upfront, Alexis. I'm not interested in a relationship. I'm looking for someone who's open to a contract-based surrogacy agreement." I stared at him, thinking I'd misheard. He continued, very matter-of-fact, "I don't want a partner. I just want a child. I'm willing to pay well, cover everything, but after the birth, I expect full custody. No involvement from your side. No visits, no contact. You'd sign over all rights. You'd be free after that." He said it like he was offering a job. I asked if he was joking. He shook his head. No, I've been thinking this through for years. Most women waste time with relationships. I want efficiency. I don't want emotions involved. His tone didn't change, like he was reading off a contract. I told him flatly that I wasn't interested, that I wasn't comfortable continuing this. I got up to leave. He didn't stop me, just gave me this look, like I'd failed some test. It wasn't anger exactly, more like disappointment. As I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me. That night, I tried to shake it off. I told myself he was just some guy with a weird idea of what dating should be. I figured that was the end of it. But the next morning, he sent me a link to an article titled, "The Future of Surrogacy: Modern Families Without Relationships." Then another one about women wasting fertility years on pointless romance. He followed that with a long message saying I should reconsider my priorities. I didn't respond. I blocked his number. I thought that would be it. But then I got a message on Instagram from a new account with no profile picture. It was just a quote from one of the articles he sent before. I blocked that account too. Later that day, I got a friend request on Facebook from a name I didn't recognize. No photo, but mutual friends with people from my high school. I clicked the profile. No posts, no info. Just a cover photo of a crib. I blocked that too. I checked my LinkedIn. A message from someone claiming to be starting a family-focused startup, asking if I'd be interested in a reproductive consulting opportunity. I blocked again. Then another Instagram account followed me. Same pattern. No posts, no name. Just a default icon and a single line in the bio. You're missing a life-changing chance. I locked all my accounts, changed my privacy settings, and made everything as private as possible. Still, every few days, a new attempt popped up. Always the same style. Vague, impersonal, pushing that same twisted idea. The messages got worse. At first, it was more articles and passive-aggressive comments, but then he started accusing me of rejecting happiness and ruining the dream of a good father. His words were unhinged. He said I was choosing loneliness over purpose and lying to myself about what women are made for. Then came the threats. He said he'd post our conversations and twist them to make it look like I'd agreed. He claimed he had evidence that I led him on, that I promised him something. It made no sense, but I knew how fast reputations could be damaged online. I started taking screenshots of everything. Every message, every weird account he used to contact me, I saved it all. It was hard to keep track. He'd use different names, slightly different profile pictures, sometimes pretending to be someone new entirely. One account even messaged me pretending to be a woman who had successfully helped Martin. It was all fake. I knew it was him. Then I stumbled across a post on a forum for women in the city. Someone had asked if anyone else had been approached with a similar offer about surrogacy. I read through the thread and my heart dropped. There were others. One woman responded to my comment and then messaged me privately. She said Martin had approached her the same way, months earlier. Same polite messages, same talk about children, then the same switch to his proposal. When she said no, he flooded her inbox with guilt trips and fake stats about fertility. She told me he'd done this to multiple women already, always creating new accounts after getting blocked. She said he'd even threatened to contact her workplace once. It was like he had a system. Target vulnerable people, charm them just enough, then hit them with his deal. If they said no, he'd try to shame them, scare them, or ruin their name. That's when I decided to do something bigger than just blocking him. I wrote an anonymous post in a popular local group. I didn't use his name at first, just described his approach in detail. How he started, how he shifted, the kinds of things he said. and how he reacted when rejected. I asked if anyone else had met someone like this. The comments exploded. People recognized the pattern. A few women even replied publicly saying, "I think I know exactly who this is." One posted screenshots that were eerily similar to mine. Another mentioned he once showed up near her work, though he didn't speak to her. The most disturbing part was how careful he was. He never said anything explicitly illegal. He knew how to walk the line. But the emotional manipulation was precise and targeted. Some of the women admitted they'd considered saying yes, not because they wanted to, but because he made them feel like they had no other value. Like their only worth was in being useful to him. Then Martin noticed the post. He started commenting under fake accounts, dozens of them. At first he denied it, then he started threatening legal action. One comment read, "You're all spreading lies. Defamation is a crime. You will be held responsible." Another account said I was a jealous ex trying to destroy a good man's dream. Then he started posting false claims about me. That I'd offered to be a surrogate and backed out. That I was unstable. He even claimed I'd sent him explicit photos, which never happened. But something shifted. The more he tried to bury it, the more people joined in. Women I'd never met started adding screenshots, quoting messages he'd sent them, and warning others to avoid him. A few said they'd reported him months ago, but nothing happened because it all seemed like just dating gone bad. Now, though, there were dozens of accounts all telling the same story. Moderators started stepping in. They banned his fake profiles, shut down threads he tried to hijack, and warned others about similar behavior. A few people even claimed they'd reported him to local authorities, not for a specific crime, but for consistent harassment. Some were skeptical, saying nothing could be done if he hadn't broken the law. But others pushed back. They said a coordinated pattern of emotional pressure like this wasn't just weird, it was dangerous. Especially since he targeted people who were vulnerable. Eventually, his profiles started disappearing. One by one. Instagram, gone. Facebook, gone. He'd make new ones, but they'd get reported and removed within hours. The forum posts stayed up and kept getting shared. I stopped getting weird messages. No new accounts followed me. My inbox was quiet. I knew better than to think it was over for good. People like that don't just vanish. They find new ways, new names, different cities. But the public pressure made it a lot harder for him. His scheme didn't work in silence anymore. If he tried the same method again, there was a real chance someone would recognize it and shut it down. Over time, I felt more stable. I got back into my routine, work, gym, weekend coffee runs. I wasn't scared anymore, just more alert. More careful. I knew now that I wasn't alone. And that helped. Knowing others had seen the same thing, lived through it, and stood up. I realized how powerful it was to bring something like this into the open. Now, anytime a conversation online turns strange, or someone pushes boundaries too fast, I don't hesitate. I don't second-guess myself. I just walk away. Block. Report. Move on. I tell friends to trust that instinct when something feels off, even if they can't explain it. Martin's just a name now. A reminder that not all danger looks like danger at first. Some of it wears a smile and talks about family and uses soft words to hide sharp motives. But once you see it, you don't forget. And you don't let it slide back into silence. The first time I saw Trevor, he was standing by Clara's porch with a bouquet of cheap supermarket flowers and a forced-looking smile. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was carrying a box of HDMI cables back from my car. He waved at me like we were already friends. I nodded back, then went inside. Something about him rubbed me the wrong way. but I told myself not to be cynical. Clara had been through enough. Her ex-husband bailed a year ago, and she'd been raising 2 kids alone, working night shifts at the hospital. If anyone deserved to be happy, it was her. I'm Jason, and I sell electronics at a big box store. I live 10 minutes from Clara's street. Rows of small houses with tiny front yards, kids' bikes in the driveways, and those old-school mailboxes with red flags that the neighbors check first thing every morning. I've known Clara since we were teenagers. She's tough, no nonsense, not someone who gets fooled easy. But when she told me she was trying out a dating app, I figured maybe she was finally ready to let someone in again. It wasn't long before she told me about Trevor. Said he was a finance guy, mid-30s, normal, which was apparently a plus. According to her, he liked hiking, had no kids, and lived on the other side of town. They messaged for a week, then started meeting up for coffee. Within a few days, she was texting me photos of them smiling at a food truck park or walking her dog together. He had that look, a little too polished, like he copied an outfit from a magazine. But he said the right things, brought her kids small gifts from the gas station, helped fix the squeaky sliding door. Clara was glowing, and I didn't want to rain on it. But something didn't sit right. Trevor was always around. Too much. Within a week, he was spending the night. She told me in passing one day while we were grabbing groceries. "It just feels so natural," she said, tossing juice boxes into the cart. "He's great with the kids." I nodded, said something generic, but my stomach turned a little. It wasn't that I didn't want her to be happy. I just didn't trust how fast everything was moving. The next few days, I paid closer attention. His car was parked outside her house almost every evening. I passed by on my evening walk, just out of habit, and caught glimpses through the blinds. Him sitting on the couch, feet up like he'd been there forever. The kids seemed fine, still riding their scooters, but I couldn't help noticing how much time he was spending alone with them. Clara worked swing shifts, and sometimes she mentioned how Trevor stayed over and helped with bedtime if she had to leave early. That hit me sideways. She barely knew this guy. I didn't say anything at first. Didn't want to sound like a jealous friend. But one night, sitting at home with nothing to do, I opened my laptop and searched for Trevor's full name. Clara had mentioned it once when showing me his photo. I expected to find a LinkedIn profile, maybe a Facebook. Something. But there was nothing. No hits on Google except some random spam-looking pages. Not even a trace of the finance job he supposedly had. That alone wouldn't be so weird, but something told me to keep digging. Eventually, I found a Twitter account with a matching profile photo. It was a low-res picture, but the haircut and jawline looked the same. The account wasn't under his real name, just a string of numbers and letters, but the profile picture was what caught my eye. The tweets were mostly retweets, a lot of them bizarre or political, some flat-out offensive. I scrolled deeper. That's when my stomach dropped. He'd liked and shared posts from accounts that talked about relationships between adults and minors, coded language, but not subtle. Threads justifying behavior I won't even repeat. It wasn't just once, it was consistent. Some of the replies he posted were cryptic, but disgusting. I sat frozen for a minute. My mind jumped straight to Clara's kids, 7 and 9. And this guy was alone with them, in her house, while she worked overnight. I didn't think twice. I knew I couldn't go to Clara first. She'd think I was being paranoid or meddling. She trusted him now. But I knew she still talked to her mom every day, and her mom trusted me. I called her that night around 10 p.m. I didn't waste time. I told her everything, how fast he'd moved in, how sketchy his online presence was, and the Twitter account I found. I heard her go quiet. Then, a low, "Oh my God," She thanked me, said she'd take care of it. The next morning, she was at Clara's house before 8. I know because I parked down the street and watched from my car. Clara answered the door in a robe, looking half asleep. Her mom pushed past her into the house. Trevor's car was still there. Clara didn't believe it at first. She kept repeating, "You're exaggerating. It's just old posts. Probably nothing." I stood in the doorway while her mom sat her down in the kitchen and pulled up the screenshots on her tablet. Clara stared at them for a while without speaking. Then she said, maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe he hit like by accident. People do that sometimes, she said, but she didn't sound confident. Her mom didn't let up. She said, "If there's nothing to hide, we'll ask him directly." Trevor came in 10 minutes later. He had a coffee in one hand and a grocery bag in the other, acting like everything was normal. Clara's mom wasted no time. She asked him directly about the Twitter account, the likes, the posts. He froze. Then came a string of weird excuses. "That's not even my account," he said first. Then when she showed him the picture, he switched to, "Okay, but I didn't know what those posts were about. I liked them by accident." His voice cracked. He started blaming an old roommate for setting up the account. It made no sense. I didn't say a word, just watched him dig himself deeper. Clara's hands were shaking. She asked him point blank if he'd ever done anything inappropriate around her kids. He jumped to defensive mode, said we were all crazy, that this was some kind of setup. But I saw Clara's face change. I think that was the moment it finally clicked for her. Later that day, she told me something that chilled me to the bone. A week earlier, she had come home after a long shift and found the kids unusually quiet. Not scared, but off. She asked what they did while Trevor was there, and they just shrugged. Didn't give a real answer. At the time, she thought they were just tired. But now it made her stomach turn. That night, I barely slept. I just kept thinking about how close this man got. How fast he worked his way in. The next morning, Clara told him to pack up his things and leave. She didn't yell. She didn't even cry. Just stood there with her arms crossed and said, "You need to go. Don't come back." He didn't leave right away. First, he started pacing. Then he said, "You're going to regret this. I could ruin your life with one phone call. You don't know who I know." His voice went from calm to desperate in seconds. Clara picked up her phone and said she was calling the police. That got him moving. He grabbed his duffel bag, stormed out, slammed the door behind him. The police came later and took a report. They couldn't arrest him on anything, but they documented the threats and the confrontation. Clara wanted it all on record. After that, Trevor disappeared. Deleted his social media. Changed his number. No one saw his car in the area again. But Clara and her mom weren't taking any chances. They sat down with the kids and gently asked questions, tried to make sure nothing had happened. Luckily, there was no sign he'd harmed them. But even hearing how close it came was enough to make me sick. A few days later, someone from a nearby neighborhood reached out. They'd seen a post I made in a private parent group warning about Trevor. A woman messaged me and said, "Is this the same guy who called himself Tom on Bumble?" She sent me a photo. It was him. Same face, same smile. She said he'd made her uncomfortable after one date, kept pushing to meet her kids. Another person commented that he used a different name and said he worked in real estate. Patterns started forming. Always the same. Charming, helpful, too eager to be part of the family. Always targeting single moms. By now, even the people who doubted me were starting to take it seriously. Clara's mom called me one night just to say thank you. She said, "We almost let the wolf in the front door." I couldn't stop thinking about how close it had been. Just 1 or 2 more weeks, and who knows what could have happened. Clara filed a police report just in case. Officially, there wasn't enough evidence to charge him, but she wasn't taking chances. I helped her install cameras around the house, motion lights, new locks. She changed all her passwords and deleted old messages. She even changed her phone number. For a few weeks, she jumped at shadows, but eventually things settled down. The kids bounced back quick. I think they sensed the tension was over, even if they didn't fully understand it. Clara struggled with guilt for a while. She kept saying, "I should have known. I let him in." But I reminded her, these people are experts at pretending. That's what makes them dangerous. What matters is that she acted when it counted. After everything, I shared the full story in our local parenting groups, not to scare people, but to wake them up. I told them to do background checks, to follow gut instincts, to not dismiss red flags because someone smiles and holds doors open. It wasn't about paranoia, it was about protection. Trevor vanished off the grid. No online trace, no sightings. I'm almost sure he'll show up again somewhere, under a new name, new story, same tactics. But maybe next time, someone like me will recognize the signs sooner. Maybe this time, it won't get that far. And if you're reading this wondering whether to dig a little deeper into someone who seems too good to be true, do it. You might be the only one who does. My name is Mila, and I moved a few years ago from a small town to a bigger city. Nothing too dramatic, just wanted more options, more places to walk, more little cafes to try. I work a pretty standard office job, and in the evenings, I like to walk through the parks near my apartment. I usually stop by this one coffee shop that does these amazing glazed donuts. Life was quiet, predictable, not boring, just steady. And I liked that. A few months back, I downloaded a dating app. Not because I was desperate or anything, I just thought it might be fun to meet someone new. Talk to a few people, maybe grab a coffee with someone now and then. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just company. One night, I came across a profile of a guy named Travis. Short brown hair, strong jaw, kind of tired eyes. There was something weirdly familiar about his face. It bugged me. We matched, and after chatting a bit, he asked if we'd gone to the same high school. The name of the school rang a bell, and suddenly it clicked. He did look familiar. He was that guy who got expelled during our second year. Fights, threats, always in the principal's office. I hadn't thought of him in years. He confirmed it. Said he got kicked out for a fight that got too out of hand. But then he added that people change, and he'd been through a lot since then. Told me he works construction now. Said it helped him stay focused, stay out of trouble. I met him for coffee the next weekend. I wasn't sure what to expect, but when he showed up, he looked pretty normal. Jeans, boots, flannel shirt. He smiled when he saw me, and for a while, he didn't seem like the same guy I remembered. He talked about his work, early mornings, long hours, how he was trying to fix things in his life. He didn't bring up the past much, only to say he'd made some dumb choices and wanted to move forward. He was calm, polite even, not charming exactly, but easy to talk to. The next few days, he messaged me often. Never too much. Just enough to keep the conversation going. After a few more meetups, he offered to drive me home. Said it wasn't safe walking alone at night. I didn't see the harm. He had a pickup truck, kind of beat up, but clean inside. He had a phone mount on the dash and one of those little air fresheners hanging from the mirror, pine-scented. He asked a lot of questions, but not in a pushy way. Just small things like how my workday went, if I liked my team, if I lived alone. I figured he was just making conversation. I told myself he was trying to be thoughtful. He started waiting outside the coffee shop on days we agreed to meet, leaning against his truck, already holding a coffee for me. Once, when I was running late, he texted asking if everything was okay. That seemed sweet, but it started feeling like he always had to know where I was. He asked if I was meeting friends, if I had plans on the weekend, what I was doing after work. He wasn't rude about it, but it felt like a constant check-in. One evening, I stayed late at work because we had a system crash. When I got home, I saw I had 5 missed calls and a bunch of messages. They weren't angry, just short. "You okay? Still at work? Why aren't you answering?" I replied that we had a technical issue and I couldn't check my phone. He sent a thumbs up emoji and didn't reply again that night. The next time we met, he made a comment. "Hope your IT guy isn't too friendly." I thought he was joking, so I laughed, but he didn't smile. He stared at me for a few seconds, then changed the topic. I started noticing more of that. Small digs, little comments wrapped in humor. If I laughed too hard at a story I told about a coworker, he'd say something like, "You sure you're not crushing on him?" When I told him I was planning to grab dinner with some people from the office, he frowned and asked, "Guys or girls?" I said both, and he said nothing after that. Just went quiet. Once, I picked up my phone while we were out walking, just a message from my sister. And he leaned over and glanced at the screen. Didn't even try to be subtle. He said, "Must be someone important," and then didn't speak for 10 minutes. I told him I didn't like that it wasn't okay to monitor who I talk to or where I go. He nodded slowly and said, "Sure, yeah, I get it." But he was stiff after that. Walked in silence. Didn't offer to drive me home. At the next meetup, he was all smiles again. But something about it felt off. Like he was pretending. He'd always been intense, but now it was hidden behind politeness that didn't feel real. I started noticing how he reacted when I talked about things outside of our time together. If I mentioned going somewhere without him, he'd frown. If I said I needed time to focus on work, he'd say, "You never seem too busy for them." One time I told him I didn't want to meet that week, and he just said, "Fine," and then didn't text me for 3 days. When he finally messaged again, it was just, "Still mad?" A couple of weeks later, I noticed his truck parked across the street from my office building. It was the same white pickup with the dented fender and the faded company logo on the side. At first, I thought maybe it was a coincidence. But when I came out an hour later and it was still there, and he was sitting inside, engine running, I knew it wasn't. I didn't approach him. I just got into my car and drove home, heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. He didn't follow me, not that time. But the next day, I saw his truck again. And the day after that, he never got out, never messaged, but he was there, watching. Then my brother called. He sounded confused, almost nervous. Said some guy had messaged him on social media, asking about me. Questions like where I like to go on weekends, what kind of friends I hung out with, if I still liked the same coffee place. My brother didn't respond, just blocked the account and called me right away. When I told him it was Travis, he got quiet, then said, "That's not normal, Mila." Later that week, my manager pulled me aside. Said he'd received a message from someone named Travis, claiming to be concerned about my well-being. According to him, I was being worked too hard and coming home mentally drained. He'd asked my boss to avoid assigning me late hours. My manager didn't press me, just asked if everything was all right. I told him I'd take care of it. That night, I called Travis. I told him that this had gone way too far. That showing up unannounced, messaging my family, and especially contacting my workplace was unacceptable. I didn't raise my voice. I wanted to be calm, to make it clear there was no misunderstanding. He didn't argue. He didn't even say much, just listened. Then, right before hanging up, he muttered, I was only trying to care about you. I blocked his number after that. But that didn't stop him from showing up. A few days later, I saw him parked near my building. Not directly outside, just far enough to make it seem accidental. I saw him again 2 days later, this time walking across the street as I was unlocking my front door. He didn't say anything, just looked at me. I locked the door and didn't move from the window until he left. A week after that, he forced his way into the building. Someone must have left the main door ajar, because I heard heavy boots on the stairs, and then loud knocking, not on my door, but on the neighbor's. I peeked through the peephole and saw him talking to the old man across the hall. Later, the neighbor told me he was asking if anyone had spare keys for my apartment, saying he was a worried friend. I didn't wait. I called the police immediately. When they arrived, Travis had already gone, but I filed a report and gave them everything. His full name, his plate number, screenshots of the messages, everything I had. An officer told me it was good I acted early. They couldn't arrest him yet, but they could start a record. I was told to file for a restraining order. Travis must have realized things were getting serious. He stopped coming by after that, but he switched to long, emotional texts. He used an unknown number, but I knew it was him. Paragraphs and paragraphs about how I'd led him on, how I never gave him a fair chance, how he could have been different if I just believed in him. He talked like we'd been together for years, like I'd betrayed him deeply. It was disturbing to read, but I saved everything. I knew I might need it. The worst part was the way he twisted everything. He made it sound like I was the one who gave up too fast. Like I'd ignored all the effort he put into being better. For a moment, it made me doubt myself. But then I'd remember the truck, the messages to my boss, the knock on my neighbor's door. I took the documents to the local precinct and spoke to a district officer, explained everything. They helped me fill out the paperwork and told me how the process would go. I signed the forms and handed them over. They said he'd be notified officially, and that if he approached me again, he'd be in violation. After that, he disappeared. For the first time in months, I could sleep without checking the windows. I changed my locks. My brother stayed over for a few nights just in case. I didn't go back to the dating app. I deleted it. There was still this guilt sitting somewhere deep in me. Guilt that I gave him a chance, that I ignored the warning signs in the beginning. But my friend sat me down and reminded me, people don't wear signs on their foreheads. He didn't show up to that first date with a police report in his hand. He said the right things, smiled at the right moments. I couldn't have known. Still, it changed how I moved through the world. I don't meet people without checking their full name now. I don't tell strangers where I work or where I live. I stopped sharing my location on social media. Sometimes I remember how convincing he was, how normal he acted, how thoughtful he seemed. And I realize it wasn't kindness, it was control. Quiet, slow, creeping control. What scares me most is how close I came to missing it, how close I came to believing him. That's why I filed the report when I did. That's why I stopped answering, stopped hoping he'd stop on his own. Because people like that don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are. My name is Alex. I work in IT, so I spend a lot of time online. A few months ago, I got into a thread on this niche forum where people were debating the whole idea of open relationships. Most of it was just typical internet talk, opinions, some arguments. But one post stood out. It was from a couple looking for a third partner. The tone wasn't sleazy or weird. They wrote in a way that sounded thoughtful, respectful. Curious, I replied. After a few messages back and forth, I started talking more with the woman in the couple. Her name was Tina. She said she and her partner believed in full transparency and openness. She described their relationship as honest, communicative, and said that any new connection they made had to be built on mutual understanding and trust. It was all very calm and philosophical. At first, it was just casual conversation, nothing flirtatious. Tina talked about their house, how they designed it to be a welcoming space. She told me they often hosted dinner parties, had friends over all the time. She sounded smart, maybe a bit intense, but in control. I told her I wasn't sure how I felt about the idea of joining a couple's relationship, even casually. She said there was no pressure, that they liked meeting new people without expectations. Eventually, after about 2 weeks of chatting online and over video, we agreed to meet. We got coffee downtown, middle of the day, neutral location. She was striking in person, stylish but not showy, really poised. She had this way of talking where she made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We didn't talk much about intimacy that day. It was mostly ideas, beliefs, philosophy of relationships, things like that. I walked away from it thinking, okay, maybe this isn't so strange. A few days later, she invited me over. She said her partner, Eric, was totally aware, that he'd be around, and that it wasn't a date, just hanging out, getting to know each other. The house was in a quiet neighborhood, corner lot, kind of hidden behind trees. Big yard, wooden deck, a couple cars in the driveway. Inside it was warm, decorated in a sort of bohemian style. Plants everywhere. Low light. Big sectional couch. Open kitchen with a lot of natural wood. It didn't feel like some weird setup. It felt like a place where people cooked together, sat around talking late into the night. Tina introduced me to Eric right away. He was friendly, quiet, looked like someone who worked with his hands. We talked a bit, nothing deep. Later, 2 more people showed up, Jess and Nate. She said they were friends, also in the circle. Everyone seemed to know each other well. I stayed for a few hours. We made food, had some drinks, played music. It really did feel like a group of close friends just enjoying a night in. I started visiting more, usually just evenings, weekends. It never felt forced. But after a while, I started noticing things. Jess and Nate were always around. They didn't just hang out, they helped with everything. Cleaning dishes, setting up the hookah, fixing little things around the house. One night I saw Nate adjusting the thermostat and then asking Tina if the temperature was okay. She barely looked at him, just nodded. He smiled like he'd been given a compliment. That kind of thing started happening a lot. It wasn't just casual friendship. It felt like everyone was trying to stay in Tina's good graces. She would ask someone to bring her tea, and they'd jump up to do it. If she made a comment about music being too loud, the volume went down instantly. And when she laughed at someone's joke, you could see how relieved they looked. At first, I figured maybe they were just really close. But the way they acted, it was like they were competing. I didn't say anything right away. I thought maybe I was overthinking it. But then one night, Tina pulled me aside in the hallway while I was grabbing a glass of water. "You're doing well," she said. "Just keep being consistent. I like people who know how to behave." I laughed, thinking she was being playful, but she didn't smile back. She just looked at me for a second and walked off. That night, I saw Nate and Jess having a quiet argument in the backyard. They stopped when they saw me. I pretended I hadn't noticed. A few days later, I told Jess that I wasn't sure about all this. I asked her if she ever felt like there was a lot of pressure to stay on Tina's good side. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "You don't understand her yet," and left it at that. Tina's attitude toward me didn't change much on the surface. She'd still include me in things, still message me updates on plans or ideas. But sometimes she'd make comments that stuck in my head. Like, "I reward loyalty," Or, some people are only useful when they know their place. She didn't say them directly to me, but they were always said when I was nearby. I started getting the feeling I was being tested. Like every response I gave, every task I did or didn't do, was being quietly noted. Once, I brought a bottle of wine to dinner, and she barely acknowledged it. Later that night, she complimented Nate for helping rearrange some bookshelves, and then added, "See, that's the kind of gesture that doesn't need to be announced." I didn't say anything. But after that, I noticed Nate watching me a lot. Not in a friendly way, like he was trying to figure out if I was competition. I talked to Eric once, alone in the garage while he was fixing something. I asked if he ever felt things got weird. He wiped his hands, looked at me and said, "You either learn how this works, or you don't." Then he handed me a toolbox and told me to bring it inside. Tina always said this was a completely free format, that nobody owed anyone anything, that it was all about choice. But somehow, her rules were everywhere. Unspoken or not, they were real. If you didn't message her good morning, she got cold. If you didn't bring something to dinner, wine, flowers, snacks, you were ignored the rest of the night. If you didn't compliment her outfit or thank her for cooking, she'd sigh dramatically, say something like, "It's fine. I don't expect everyone to care." She never directly asked for things. She'd just drop little hints, how she loved fresh pastries from this expensive bakery, or how flowers always made her feel appreciated. Next day, someone would show up with those exact flowers. I once saw Jess clean the whole kitchen, rearrange a shelf, then wait silently by the door until Tina came in. Tina glanced once, said, "Nice," and walked away. Jess smiled like she'd just won something. People started doing ridiculous things to get her attention. Nate painted a huge mural in the garage just because she mentioned she liked abstract art. Another guy, I think his name was Misha, drove across the city to get some special incense she liked. I didn't understand how they couldn't see what was happening. Or maybe they did. But it didn't matter. We were all caught up in this orbit around her. I kept thinking I could stay out of it, keep things casual. But I started feeling like I had to give more just to stay included. I brought groceries, fixed her bike chain, even built a shelf in her closet. She'd smile and say, "You're really starting to get it." That made me feel like I was finally part of something. I didn't want to lose that. I started spending more money. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, just buying food, stuff for the house. But I saw my savings drop. I justified it by calling it community living. I thought I was investing in connection. But the more I gave, the less it felt like mine. I wasn't sure anymore what I wanted. Tina had this way of turning everything into a test. I started noticing how I dressed, how I talked, how quickly I responded to her messages. Every day felt like trying to prove I deserved to be there, and I couldn't even talk about it. I tried once, telling Eric that things were getting intense. He said, "Tina's just passionate. That's what makes this place special." Then he changed the subject. I felt like I was the problem for not getting it. Then one day, she asked me if I ever thought about moving in full-time. I said I wasn't sure, that my work didn't really allow that. She looked at me and said, "Well, maybe it's time to decide what matters more, your career or your place here." I laughed awkwardly, but she didn't. She was serious. That conversation sat with me for days. Then, a week later, she said I was half in, half out, and it was starting to affect the energy of the group. She told me flat out, "You'd be happier if you just let go of all that outside noise." Then she asked if I was willing to quit my job. That was it. I knew I couldn't do it. I wasn't even happy anymore, just nervous all the time. I barely recognized myself. I said I needed space, that maybe this wasn't the right fit after all. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she started yelling, said I was abandoning her, that I was selfish, that I used her. The others stood in the doorway, silent. Eric looked at the floor. She told me to get out. It was 2 a.m. I packed what I could into my backpack, some clothes, my charger, a pair of shoes. I called a taxi and waited outside, shivering in a t-shirt. Nobody came to say goodbye. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall for hours. My mind kept looping the same thoughts. How did I not see it? Why didn't I leave sooner? How did I let someone else decide what I was worth? For weeks, I couldn't focus. I skipped meals, ignored calls. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I was too embarrassed. I'd always thought of myself as level-headed, logical. But this was something else. I'd let myself be pulled into a situation where everything about me was slowly reshaped to fit someone else's expectations. The worst part was how quiet it got. No more group chats, no more dinners, no more validation. Just silence. It made me question everything, what I believed in, what I wanted. I started having dark thoughts, stuff I never dealt with before. I knew I had to do something. I found a therapist online. At first, I didn't even know what to say. But over time, I talked through everything. How subtle it all was. How I didn't see it until it was too late. The therapist helped me see that manipulation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a smile, a compliment, a rule hidden behind a suggestion. It wasn't my fault for falling into it. It happens to people who just want to belong. A few months later, I got a message from Nate. Just a simple, "You okay?" I told him I was trying to be. We ended up talking. He said things at the house had gotten worse. More rules, more punishments. He wanted to leave but didn't know how. I told him what helped me. Talking to someone outside. Reconnecting with people who weren't part of that world. "Just get out," I said. "You don't owe her anything." I don't know if he ever did. Now I'm rebuilding. Reaching out to old friends, picking up hobbies again. My apartment is small, quiet, mine. I still get nervous when someone asks for too much, still flinch a little when I hear certain phrases. But I'm learning. Looking back, I can't believe how easy it was to fall into. It didn't start with control. It started with curiosity, attention, warmth. But behind all of it was a need to dominate, a need to be worshipped. And we all played into it because we were looking for something. Love, connection, meaning. My biggest lesson? Set boundaries. Trust your gut. And never give anyone the power to decide your worth. My name is Joan. I work as a realtor, showing people houses with neat lawns and wide driveways. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays well and I get to meet a lot of people. A couple of years ago, after a string of bad relationships, I decided to try dating again. I downloaded a new app that a friend recommended. It had a sleek interface and looked more serious than the usual ones. That's where I met Vince. He had a nice smile in his pictures, clean-cut look, button-up shirt, nothing flashy. What stood out was his writing. Proper sentences, polite tone, no weird jokes or lazy replies. He sounded thoughtful. We messaged for about a week before he asked me to dinner. He picked a mid-range Italian place, not too expensive but not cheap either. I liked that. The dinner went smoothly. He was calm, asked questions, listened. Then, somewhere between the main course and dessert, he brought up something odd. He said he wanted to try an experiment with me, that at each date, we'd sign a short agreement. Nothing legal, just a set of rules for the evening. Things like who pays, how long we stay out, and who picks the next place. I raised an eyebrow, and he laughed softly, saying it was a fun way to avoid awkward moments or confusion. Like, some couples argue over the check. This would prevent that. I didn't see much harm in it. I like things being clear too. I've dealt with enough flaky guys who show up late or forget plans. So I went along. He pulled out a small folded paper, maybe half a page, and handed me a pen. It was silly, just a few lines. Vince will pay the dinner bill. Joan will choose the next meeting spot. The date ends at 10:30 p.m. I signed it. It felt like a novelty, and I didn't think more about it. We ended the night with a short hug, and he messaged me later to say he had a great time. On the second date, he brought another paper. A bit longer this time. It included the same things, plus a note about how we'd greet each other and who would request the ride home. I thought he was just being quirky. I laughed and told him he should have been a lawyer. He replied, "I just like clarity. Misunderstandings ruin good things." By the third date, the paper was a full page. It had a section where I agreed not to cancel last minute, and he listed the topics we wouldn't discuss: politics, religion, past relationships. I hesitated a bit, but he looked at me and said, "It's not control, it's structure. We build trust this way." It didn't feel threatening, just odd. But I signed again. That night he paid, like he said he would. He held the door for me. Nothing was wrong exactly. It just felt a bit too careful, like everything was scripted. The fourth date was at his place. He cooked dinner, lit candles, played soft music. It looked like a scene from a catalog. Before we ate, he handed me a folder. Inside were 2 printed sheets, typed neatly, with headers and bullet points. This one looked more official. There was a section for physical expectations. That's when I started feeling something was off. One line read, "Joan agrees not to raise grievances post factum regarding consensual intimacy." Another said, "Both parties acknowledge mutual understanding of physical boundaries." I looked up at him. He smiled and said, "It's just so we're both safe, so no one feels tricked or accused later. A lot of advanced couples do this." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to make it a thing, especially after he spent the time cooking. I just nodded, pretending to read again, and signed at the bottom. After a few months, our meetings became more regular. We fell into a routine. Dinner twice a week, sometimes at my place, sometimes at his. I got used to his strange ritual with the papers. They became part of the rhythm. He'd bring a fresh printout each time. I'd skim it, maybe raise a brow at a new line, but I'd sign. It felt like a habit, something I didn't want to question too closely. Then one evening, I suggested something simple. I had some repairs being done in my apartment and mentioned he could stay over for a couple of days. Just 2 nights. Nothing major. We were already spending so much time together, and he'd slept over before. But this time, his reaction was different. He came over with a thick envelope. Inside was an actual contract. Not the playful printouts he used before. This one had a legal header, dense paragraphs, signature lines. There were 2 witness signatures already on it, people I didn't know. He said it was a temporary cohabitation agreement to protect both of us. He talked about shared space, expectations, rules about cleaning, noise, guests, and even finances. Then came the part that shook me. He had included a section for biometric consent, specifically asking for my fingerprint. He said it was to verify that I had agreed in case memories ever differ. He said it with a straight face, like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but he handed me an ink pad. That's when something finally clicked. I told him it was too much, that we were only talking about 2 nights. I said I didn't feel comfortable with something so formal and invasive. He didn't raise his voice, but his expression changed. Cold. Sharp. "If you're not ready to be transparent," he said, "what are you hiding?" That line. It wasn't a question. It was a threat, disguised as concern. Like I was guilty of something just for saying no. I told him I needed time to think. He nodded, folded the papers carefully, and said, "Let me know when you're ready to be honest." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything. The documents, the signatures, how each date had felt more like a transaction. I decided I was done. I told him 2 days later, over the phone. I was calm, direct. Said I didn't feel good about the way things were going, that I wanted to move on. He was silent for a few seconds, then said, "I thought you might say that." Then he asked me to meet. He said he had something to return, a necklace I'd left. Against my better judgment, I went. He met me at a cafe, passed me a small bag with the necklace. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a USB drive, put it on the table. He looked straight at me and said, "This has everything. You know what I mean." I froze. He continued, "You signed the agreements. You gave consent. Multiple times." I said I didn't remember agreeing to be filmed. He shrugged. "It's all in the materials clause. Documentation in any format. You signed every page." My stomach turned. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. He didn't look angry. He looked pleased. Calm, composed, as always. I asked him what he wanted. He smiled. "Nothing, as long as you don't do anything rash." I realized he wasn't going to delete anything. He'd planned this. He'd built a safety net for himself. I had given him the tools. I begged him. I said those videos weren't fair, that I never gave real permission. He leaned back and said, "You did. I've got your name, signature, date, even timestamps. This is why the paperwork matters." That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel, panicking. I knew he had me trapped. Not legally, not completely, but close. He could ruin me with one upload. I went to a lawyer the next day. He looked through copies I'd kept, notes I'd made. He said it was a nightmare. The papers were vague but detailed enough to complicate things. The biometric data, the witness signatures, all of it added weight. He told me I could maybe challenge some parts, if I could prove coercion or manipulation. But it would take months, and there were no guarantees. Vince hadn't done anything illegal. Not exactly. He just used the system better than I had. I tried to move on, to forget, to live quietly. But 6 months later, I found something that changed everything. It started with fatigue, then weight loss, then more serious symptoms. The doctor ordered tests, and a week later, I was called in. I had contracted a severe disease, something that spreads through close contact, something that doesn't go away. I was in shock. I'd had routine checkups before meeting Vince. I was clean. I called him. I didn't yell. I just asked, "Did you know?" He sighed, like I'd asked something boring. "My medical matters are private," he said. "You agreed to full discretion." I said this was different. He didn't care. He didn't deny anything. He just warned, "Push this, and you know what happens." I was shaking when I hung up. I tried again to talk to lawyers, but it went nowhere. The agreements covered everything, so vaguely yet so tightly, he'd left no room for me to maneuver. Even if I tried to expose him, I risked exposing myself. He knew that. I started getting strange emails, anonymous, but with screenshots of messages, photos from our dates. Nothing explicit, but enough to scare me. He was reminding me he still had control. I couldn't sleep. I watched the door at night. Every time I saw someone with a phone pointed in my direction. I froze. Eventually, I sold my apartment. I left the city. New number, new job, everything. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I couldn't risk it. He never hit me. He never yelled. But he ruined me in ways I didn't know were possible. I never saw him again. But I know he's still out there, with copies of everything, waiting. My name is Mark, and I've known Joanna since we were kids. We grew up on the same street, went to the same school, even took the same after-school classes. She was the kind of person you could talk to for hours about anything, always smiling, always full of energy. We used to swap textbooks, sit together at lunch, and she knew everything about me. I knew everything about her. That kind of closeness doesn't come around often. But after high school, our paths split. I moved to another city for university. She stayed behind to help with her family's small grocery store. At first, we kept in touch. Calls every week, random texts, sharing music and stories from our new lives. But slowly, the messages from her started getting shorter. Less often. She'd sometimes ignore calls. I figured she was just busy. When I moved back to our hometown a few years later, I hoped we could reconnect. First thing I did was visit her family's store. Her mom was still there behind the counter. I asked about Joanna, and her mom said she wasn't in that day. Something about her schedule being unpredictable now. That sounded off, but I let it go. A few days later, I finally ran into her. She was walking out of a pharmacy downtown. I waved from across the street and jogged over, but she barely looked up. She gave me this tired smile, almost like it was painful to see me. Her hair was shorter, her clothes more conservative than I remembered. She used to dress in bright colors and loud patterns. Now everything was beige and black. I asked if she wanted to grab coffee sometime, just to catch up. She hesitated, then said she was really busy lately but would let me know. She never did. That was the first time I noticed something had changed in a way that didn't feel right. I asked a mutual friend, Anna, if she'd talked to Joanna recently. She said Joanna had kind of disappeared. No more weekend hangouts, no replies in the group chat. Then Anna told me Joanna had started dating a guy named Zach. Met him online, apparently. Anna only met him once at a party, said he was quiet but intense. Over the next couple weeks, I tried reaching out again. Sent her a few texts. She replied, but always with short answers, like she was afraid of saying too much. Things like, "Hope you're well," or "Can't talk now, maybe later." I asked her again to meet for coffee. She kept dodging it. Said she had work, or errands, or Zach had something planned. Before, she would have jumped at the idea. We used to grab coffee after every major life event just to talk through it. Then I saw her in the mall one afternoon. It was a random weekday, and I was just cutting through to get to the parking lot. I spotted her near one of the clothing stores. She looked thinner than before, almost unhealthy. Her face was pale, and she moved like she was nervous. Twitchy, always looking around. She wasn't alone. Zach was with her. He stood about a foot away but didn't take his eyes off her. Even when she stepped into the fitting room area, he stayed close, watching the curtain like a guard. She didn't notice me. Or maybe she did, and ignored it. I stood behind a rack of jackets, pretending to look through them while keeping one eye on them. Something about the way he hovered made me uncomfortable. It wasn't just protective. It was controlling. At one point, she pulled out her phone and glanced at it. Zach leaned over, said something to her in a low voice, and she immediately put it back in her bag. Her whole body looked tense. I didn't want to make a scene in public, but every part of me wanted to walk over and say something. I held back. That night, I looked up her social media. She hadn't posted much recently, but what little there was felt off. One post from 2 months ago showed her hand with a silver engagement ring. Caption was just a heart emoji. No photo of Zach, no announcement, just that. Before that, there was nothing for weeks. No likes from friends, no comments from her usual group. I asked around again. A few people said they hadn't seen her in ages. One guy from our old friend group said she stopped replying to messages altogether. She's just living her new life, someone said. But it didn't look like living to me. I finally wrote her a long message one night. I kept it calm. Told her I missed our friendship. Said I wasn't trying to cause drama. I just wanted to meet up in person and talk, just us. I asked if she was okay. Begged her really to give me 5 minutes of her time. I hit send and waited. The reply came the next morning. Everything in my life is fine. I don't want to revisit any past negativity. Please respect that. That didn't make sense. We never had any negativity. Nothing happened between us that could be called that. It read like something someone else might have written, or something she'd been told to say. I stared at the message, rereading it again and again. Sometime later, I heard Joanna had quit her job and moved. No one knew where exactly. She didn't tell any of her old friends, not even her co-workers. That's when the worry started turning into something heavier. Something darker. It felt like Zach had completely cut her off from her previous life. I tried calling her again, but her number went straight to voicemail. I left a message, then another one a few days later. No reply. I went by her old workplace, just to ask. One of the employees there told me she'd left without any explanation. Just stopped showing up and sent a short message saying she wouldn't be coming back. That was it. At that point, I knew I had to try something different. I created a fake social media profile. It felt wrong, but I didn't know any other way to reach her or even check if she was okay. Through that account, I searched her profile again. She'd made it private, but I managed to get in. What I saw didn't look like Joanna at all. Her pictures were full of heavy makeup, tight dresses, flashy backgrounds. The captions didn't sound like her. Aggressive hashtags, weird motivational quotes, things she would have rolled her eyes at before. One photo showed her with Zach, his arm around her shoulder. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. It looked like someone told her, "Smile for the camera." It wasn't her. The whole profile looked staged, like it was designed to show some perfect, polished version of her life. A life that didn't feel real. I knew then, really knew, that she was under someone's control, and not just emotionally. It was deeper than that. He had shaped her world, cut her off, and given her this new identity to live out. I didn't know what else to do. I went to talk to her parents. Her mom opened the door, and the look on her face told me everything before she even spoke. They hadn't seen her in weeks. She'd stopped calling. When they tried reaching out, she ignored them, left messages unanswered. Her dad even drove to her last known address and was told she'd moved out. They looked as helpless as I felt. I told them everything I'd seen, everything I suspected. Her mom cried quietly. Her dad clenched his jaw and kept pacing the living room. They said Joanna used to talk about getting a car, maybe going back to school. But lately, all those plans just disappeared. She said she didn't need them anymore, that Zach had other ideas. She wasn't working, wasn't studying, wasn't meeting friends. She had no visible income. No one knew how she spent her days. I thought about going to the police. But what would I say? My friend might be in a toxic relationship? They wouldn't open a case on that. There were no bruises, no violence I could prove. Just a gut feeling. Just isolation. Just silence. I kept asking myself if I was overreacting. But every time I thought about her empty face in those photos, I knew I wasn't. Weeks passed. Then months. I stopped hearing anything new. Her profile remained active, but sterile. Always the same type of pictures, same captions. Never comments from friends. Just her and Zach. Posed. Polished. Then one day I got a message. From her real account. It was short. Just a few lines. Please stop trying to contact me. I'm fine. My life is different now, and I've chosen it. I hope you understand. Don't bring past negativity into it. There it was again. Past negativity. That same phrase. Like a script. Like she'd been told what to say. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. There was nothing I could say. She was gone. Not physically, but the Joanna I knew wasn't in there anymore. Zach had rewritten her, and she'd either accepted it or been forced to live with it. I'll never know for sure which. Every once in a while I still write her. Neutral messages, short emails, just saying I'm here. Just in case one day she reads them and decides to reach out. But nothing ever comes back. And maybe the worst part is realizing I've really lost her. That someone I cared about for so many years has been swallowed up by someone else's control. And there's nothing I can do to pull her back. About a month ago, a guy named Eric moved into the house across the street from mine. I live in a small neighborhood where all the houses look pretty much the same. Two-story brick homes, narrow driveways, trimmed lawns, and where people usually know each other by name. It's the kind of place where someone walking their dog will wave at you from across the street, and where small talk over fences is part of the routine. Eric stood out the moment he moved in, not in a flashy or loud way. Quite the opposite. He was quiet, almost too quiet. He looked like he worked from home, probably in tech or something. Always in a hoodie, always avoiding eye contact. He drove a dark gray hatchback, the kind that blends in. I figured he was just introverted, so I tried to be friendly. A quick, "Hey, how's it going?" when I passed him on the sidewalk. He nodded once, didn't smile, didn't say anything back. The second time, same result. After that, I left him alone. But people started talking. Not in a loud way, just whispers over mailboxes and passing comments during dog walks. My neighbor Melissa mentioned that Eric had people over at odd hours, late nights, always different cars, never more than one person at a time. But no one actually saw the guests leave. It became a weird running thought. Like, how do all these people come in and never come out? At first, I brushed it off. People in neighborhoods like this love to gossip, and Eric being quiet made him an easy target. Maybe he was just private. Maybe the guests left through the back. I didn't have time to dwell on it. Then a college student named Samantha went missing. Posters showed up near the coffee shop, on telephone poles. Blonde, early 20s, last seen leaving campus around 9 p.m. The news said she didn't make it back to her apartment. I didn't know her, never seen her around. I definitely didn't think she had anything to do with Eric. That changed on a Thursday night. It was around 11:30 p.m., and I had just gotten home from a late shift. I parked in the driveway and noticed a car I didn't recognize parked right in front of Eric's house. Not unusual in itself, but the back door on the driver's side was slightly open, just enough to see the dome light glowing faintly. The whole car was dark otherwise, like someone got out in a hurry and never came back. There were no lights on in Eric's house, no movement. The blinds were drawn shut. It made my stomach feel off. I just stood there on my porch for a bit, looking across the street at the car, waiting for someone to walk out and shut the door. No one did. After about 5 minutes, I went inside, but I didn't sleep well that night. Something about the whole thing felt wrong. The next morning, the car was still there, door still cracked open. I watched from the window as people walked past it like it wasn't there. I drank my coffee slower than usual, eyes on that car. Around 10 a.m., I walked across the street and tried knocking on Eric's door. Not hard, just a few polite knocks. No answer. But I heard something inside. Not footsteps, more like movement. A shifting sound, like someone trying to be quiet. I knocked again, louder. Still no answer. I leaned closer to the door, listening. Silence. Then that same faint noise again, like something brushing against wood or fabric. I couldn't place it. That was enough for me. I called the non-emergency line and told them what I saw. A strange car parked for hours, door open, and a neighbor who wouldn't come to the door even though I could hear someone inside. The dispatcher asked a few questions, then said someone would come check it out. 2 patrol cars showed up about 20 minutes later. The officers didn't go in right away. They looked at the car first, took photos, ran the plate, peeked inside with flashlights. I watched from my porch. One of them tried knocking on Eric's door like I did. He waited, then knocked again, louder. Same result. Nothing. After a few minutes, they called in for a tow and left without going inside. The car was gone by noon. That afternoon, nobody said anything. People saw the cops, saw the tow truck, but no one came out to talk. It was like we were all pretending it didn't happen. Eric didn't show himself either. No movement behind his curtains, no car in the driveway, just silence. A week went by, then 2. Still no sign of Eric. His trash cans didn't go out. No mail was picked up. His lawn started to look rough. I asked Melissa if she'd seen anything. She just shook her head. Everyone seemed spooked, but no one wanted to admit it. Then, 3 weeks after the car incident, I was outside watering the front bushes when I heard the noise. Not a regular engine. These were heavier vehicles, vans, black SUVs, the kind you don't normally see around here. They pulled up fast, stopping right in front of Eric's house. 5 or 6 of them. People in uniforms got out, not police, but something else. Marked jackets, serious equipment. They moved fast. No sirens, no yelling, just quick, practiced movements. I dropped the hose and stepped back toward my door, heart pounding. One of the men pulled something from the back of the van, a battering ram. Another guy gave a signal. A second later, they forced the door open and rushed inside. Turned out Samantha's parents had hired private investigators after the police search stalled. They were the ones who dug into her phone records and found that the last call she received was traced to Eric's address. That was enough for the police to finally secure a search warrant. I wasn't told any of this directly, just pieced it together from what I heard afterward. At the time, all I could do was watch from across the street as officers moved in and spread out through Eric's house. They were inside for what felt like hours. No shouting, no noise, just quiet talking, radios buzzing, and every now and then someone stepping out to grab something from the vehicles. Their faces didn't show much at first, just routine focus. But that changed all of a sudden. One officer came out of the house in a rush, calling into his radio fast and loud. Moments later, 2 more vehicles pulled up, an ambulance and another unmarked SUV. I watched their faces closely as more officers went in and out. Their expressions had changed. Pale, tense. They stopped being calm. One officer looked straight ahead but didn't really seem to be seeing anything. His jaw was locked. Another stood near the sidewalk and pulled off his gloves like his hands were burning. People from around the block started coming out, standing at the edge of their driveways, trying to figure out what was going on. You could feel the fear growing, even though no one had said anything yet. The whispers started right away. Someone said it was drugs. Someone else guessed weapons. But no one really knew. Not until they brought Eric out. He didn't resist, didn't argue, just walked with his head down, hands cuffed behind his back. His face was blank. No shock, no panic, not even guilt. Just nothing. He didn't even glance at the neighbors. He kept looking at the sidewalk in front of him like that was the only thing that mattered. I don't know what I expected to see in his face, but that emptiness made it worse. Like he didn't even care what was happening. Later that night, word got around. They found something in the basement. Behind one of the walls, there was a hidden room. It was small, tight, maybe no more than 6 feet by 10, with no windows. The door had been carefully disguised, painted and textured to match the concrete wall. You wouldn't have noticed it unless you were looking for it. Inside were restraints, a mattress, a small lamp, food wrappers, a bucket. There were clear signs someone had been held there. And from what I was told, it wasn't just recently cleaned up either. There were signs it had been used for some time. Samantha didn't make it. The medics pronounced her dead on sight. They didn't share the details publicly, but we heard enough to piece together the horror. Some of the officers looked like they were ready to be sick after coming out. One of them sat on the curb for a long time, holding his head in his hands. Everyone in the neighborhood was shaken. No one had imagined something like that could happen here. We always thought of our street as safe, average, normal. The kind of place where kids ride bikes until sunset and people leave their garages open while they mow the lawn. I didn't know Samantha, but I remember standing there that evening, watching the house with the door still wide open, and realizing I was never going to look at people the same way again. Eric was the last person anyone would suspect. He worked quietly from home, waved occasionally, paid his bills, kept to himself. Now, that silence seemed calculated. It wasn't just shyness, it was control. He didn't make mistakes. He built that room, lived next to families, smiled just enough to not raise alarms. That made everything worse. I kept thinking about the nights I saw people coming to his place, cars pulling up and never seeing anyone come back out. Maybe it wasn't the first time. Maybe someone else had been in that room before Samantha. The idea made me sick. The guilt hit harder after that. I started thinking maybe if I'd tried harder to talk to him, to notice something, I could have done something earlier. But I didn't. No one did. We all just minded our business and assumed everything was fine. The investigation later revealed that Samantha had met Eric through a dating app. He'd seemed shy but polite in their messages. Not many red flags. She was last seen getting into his car in a grocery store parking lot. After that, she just vanished. Her phone was turned off minutes later. The entire timeline lasted under an hour. When that information came out, everything changed. People who had been friendly with Eric started questioning their own memories. Parents installed security cameras. Neighbors added bars to basement windows. Some people even moved away. It was like everyone woke up at once and realized how vulnerable we'd been. I started making more of an effort to talk with my neighbors. We set up a group chat, had some small block meetings. Nobody said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. We missed something. We let someone dangerous live among us without even asking questions. Even now, months later, Eric's house is still empty. The windows are boarded up. The lawn is dead. But I still avoid walking directly in front of it. Something about the place feels wrong, like it's still watching. I don't know if that feeling will ever go away. Sometimes I dream about that night. The car, the half-open door, the soft dome light flickering. In the dream, I walk up to it. I lean inside. But instead of seeing an empty seat, I see someone's eyes in the rearview mirror. Just staring. Not moving. Not blinking. And I wake up before I can look away. My name's Milo. I gave up on traditional dating a while ago. The dinner dates, the awkward silences, the forced small talk, it just got exhausting. I figured I'd try something different, so I downloaded a few dating apps geared toward men looking for men. I live in a part of the city where no one really greets each other. People mind their business, but there are plenty of bars, events, and places where you can meet someone if you really want to. That's how I came across Lee. He had this confident but chill vibe in his messages, always cracking jokes, always finding something light to say. We started chatting, and it was easy. He seemed like someone who actually listened. I mentioned I was still carrying some baggage from a breakup last year, and he didn't shy away or get awkward. Instead, he gave me these really thoughtful messages, almost like he had some training in psychology or something. He talked a lot about emotional healing, personal growth, how relationships needed honesty and presence. It didn't sound fake. He made it sound like he cared about people, not just dating. After a few days of chatting, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner. I said yes. We met at this small, quiet cafe near his place. Nothing fancy, but the food was good, and the vibe was relaxed. We talked about music, work, dumb childhood stories. I remember thinking, finally, a normal evening with no weird tension, no awkward silences. When we left, he didn't push for anything, just gave me a hug and said he had a great time. It felt respectful, easy. We kept talking every day after that, sometimes for hours. I'd wake up and there'd be a message from him. Sometimes just a good morning, other times long texts about what he was reading or thinking about. I liked the attention at first. It felt like someone was really interested in me, not just in what I looked like, but in how I thought. But then it started to shift. Lee began texting more often. If I didn't answer right away, he'd double text, then send something like, "Did I say something wrong?" Or, "Are you pulling away from me?" At first, I tried to explain. Work gets busy. Sometimes I'm in meetings. I'm not ignoring you. He'd say, "I get it. I just think if we're building something real, we should be in emotional contact all the time." It started to feel a bit much. I mean, I liked him, but this constant pressure to reply instantly was messing with my day. I'd be in the middle of a project, and my phone would buzz 3 or 4 times in a row. Then he started calling me out if I didn't use emojis in my messages, or if I said something too short. He told me he was highly tuned to emotional distance and needed reassurance. I didn't want to upset him, so I tried to adapt. But it was like the more I gave, the more he expected. We started seeing each other more, usually at his apartment. He lived in a quiet complex not far from mine, kind of an older building, weird smell in the hallway but clean. Inside, it was minimalist. A lot of gray furniture, barely any pictures on the wall. He kept the lights dim most of the time, which I didn't think much about back then. One night, he said he wanted to deepen the bond between us. He brought out a box and started showing me these different items: leather straps, a blindfold, collars. He called it exploring roles. I'd never done anything like that before. He said it was a way to build trust, to let go of control and see who we were underneath. I didn't know how to respond. I said I wasn't sure it was my thing. He laughed and said, "It's not about the stuff. It's about connection." At first, I went along with a few things. Nothing crazy. Mostly just roleplay stuff he guided. He was always in control, which I thought maybe was his comfort zone. But then, it started to feel one-sided. Anytime I said I didn't want to try something, he'd get really serious. He'd say, "I'm starting to feel like you're rejecting who I really am," or, "This resistance means you're still holding back from me." It wasn't yelling or anything, just calm, but very intense. He made me feel like saying no was hurting him. He told me that true intimacy required complete openness, that I had walls up, and those walls were getting in the way of love. I didn't know what to say to that. It's hard to argue when someone says your refusal is a personal attack. I tried to set limits, like saying I needed a break from the constant texting. He responded with, "So now I'm too much for you?" And then didn't reply for hours. That made me feel guilty, like I'd gone too far. The silence was worse than the pressure. Every time I tried to pull back, he'd double down. He started making jokes about how I was 1 foot out the door. He'd say, "Just tell me if you're going to ghost me, I can take it." But in this way that made it sound like I already was. It messed with my head. I started questioning my reactions, thinking maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I just wasn't used to someone who was all in. He said we should spend more time at his place because it was a safe space where we could be ourselves. I agreed. I thought maybe if I leaned into it more, the pressure would ease up. But it didn't. One night when I tried to leave early, saying I had a deadline, he blocked the door with his arm. Not in a violent way, just stood there and said, "I wish you'd stop running from closeness." I told him I really had to go, and after a long pause, he stepped aside. That night I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about how it felt like I wasn't allowed to have space. I told myself I was overthinking, but something was off. The next day, he messaged me asking when I was coming over again. Then it got worse. Lee started asking for updates every hour, where I was, who I was with, what time I'd be home. At first it was subtle. Like, "Just text me when you get there," or "Let me know when you're done hanging out with your friend." But over time, it turned into constant check-ins. If I didn't respond quickly, I'd get bombarded with texts. "Why aren't you answering? What are you hiding? Who are you with that's more important than me?" I stopped going out as much just to avoid the stress. He said it was about trust. That real relationships mean full transparency. That if I cared, I wouldn't mind him knowing my schedule. I started believing it. I thought maybe I was the one being difficult. He'd always bring it back to how much he loved me, how much he believed in us. "You don't need anyone else," he'd say. "We're different. We could build something no one else would understand." He made it sound special, like we had some rare connection. I wanted to believe that. But it wasn't special. It was suffocating. I'd wake up anxious, checking my phone before doing anything else. One time I went to get groceries and left my phone in the car. When I came back, I had 12 missed calls and a long string of messages. Stuff like, "You're avoiding me," and "Why would you ghost me in the middle of the day?" I apologized, told him it was a mistake. He calmed down and said, "Just don't do it again." I thought about ending it. I really did. I even brought it up to a close friend, someone I trust, who doesn't judge. He listened, then told me straight up, "This guy's not okay. You need to get away from him." But when I thought about leaving, all I could hear was Lee's voice saying how no one else would understand me like he did. That if I left, I'd regret it. That I was giving up on something rare. And deep down, I was ashamed. I didn't want to admit how bad it had gotten. Every time I tried to step back, he'd send these long messages saying I was abandoning him. He'd talk about how I was breaking his heart, how I'd made promises I wasn't keeping. It was like walking through a minefield. Anything I did triggered something. I stopped feeling like I had choices. I just did what he expected because it was easier than dealing with the consequences. One night he said he had something special planned. Said he wanted to do something that would really bond us. I didn't know what that meant, but I went over anyway. His apartment looked the same. Dark, clean, quiet. He sat me down and said he'd been thinking about how we could prove our commitment to each other. That we needed to cross a line most people wouldn't dare to even approach. He opened a closet and brought out a small dog. I recognized it immediately. It was the neighbor's dog. I'd seen it being walked by an older guy down the hall. Lee said he was watching it for the weekend. The dog was calm, friendly, wagging its tail. Then Lee looked at me and said, "This is your chance to show me you're not like everyone else." I stared at him, confused. He smiled, picked up a small knife from the counter, and placed it on the table. "Not to kill," he said quickly. "Just to hurt. Just enough to show you're not afraid of boundaries. That you trust me. That you're capable of real connection." I couldn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at the dog, then at him. He kept talking. Said it was an experiment. That we'd understand something about each other that no one else could. That he was letting me in on something pure and real. I stood up. He told me to calm down, said I was overreacting, that I was ruining everything we'd built. I didn't care. I grabbed my jacket, walked past him, opened the door, and slammed it behind me. I didn't even wait for the elevator, ran down the stairs, got in my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to be far away. That night, I blocked his number, his socials, everything. I called in sick to work the next day and made an appointment with a counselor. I didn't know how to explain it all, but I had to start somewhere. The shame stuck with me. I kept thinking, how did I not see it sooner? Why didn't I leave earlier? But Lee didn't come in like a storm. He came in slowly, gently. He made me feel seen. Then he used that against me. It took weeks to feel even a little normal again. I didn't talk about it much, not at first. But eventually I told my friend everything. He didn't judge. Just said he was glad I got out. Therapy helped. It gave me the language to understand what happened, and more importantly, why I stayed. Lee knew exactly how to twist my need for connection into something toxic. I think about that dog sometimes. I called the building manager anonymously and reported what happened. I don't know what they did, but I never saw Lee again after that. I avoided that whole block for months. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding. Not just my sense of trust in others, but in myself. I didn't think something like that could happen to me, just because I was lonely and wanted to meet someone who got me. But I learned that no relationship, no matter how intense, should make me lose sight of my own boundaries or compassion. That night, when I slammed that door, I didn't just leave Lee's apartment. I left something darker that I didn't even realize I'd walked into. My name is Kristen. I work for a small construction supply company that also does minor repairs. It's nothing fancy, but it pays the bills and I like the routine. For a long time, I didn't date at all. Just didn't have the energy for it after work. But last fall, I finally gave in and made a profile on a dating app. I wasn't expecting much, just wanted to see what was out there. A week in, I matched with a guy named Dan. He said he was an engineer and worked on smart homes. His profile was simple, no gym pics, no cheesy quotes. Just a few pictures of him working on wiring panels, and one where he was kneeling beside a row of sleek touchscreens, probably in someone's kitchen. We started chatting, and it was surprisingly easy. He explained how he installs lighting systems you can control from your phone, how he builds custom temperature zones for each room, stuff like that. I asked questions because I was curious. Our fields weren't that far apart. He made homes smarter. I helped people fix or build the places they lived in. He wasn't flirty or over the top, just kind of calm, precise, sometimes almost robotic. But I found that refreshing. It felt like he was more focused on the work than on trying to impress me. After a week of talking, he suggested meeting in person. We picked a coffee shop near the highway. Not too busy, not too quiet. I got there first. When he walked in, I recognized him right away. Same guy from the photos. Tall, dark hoodie, no eye contact for the first minute. But he smiled when I stood up. He didn't say much during the coffee, mostly listened. I talked more than I meant to. He didn't interrupt once, just nodded, asked a few questions. When we finished, he offered to walk me to my car, which I appreciated. No awkward hugs or pressure, just a short goodbye. Over the next 2 weeks, we saw each other maybe 3 more times, always in public spots. We'd walk around home improvement stores, look at new gadgets or insulation types. That was our thing, I guess. Then one night, he texted and said he was finishing up a private project and would love to show it to me. Said it was a house he'd outfitted from scratch. Solar panels, hidden wiring, motion sensors, everything designed for energy efficiency. I said yes. He sent the address. It was outside the city, about a 30-minute drive. When I arrived, the place looked almost too perfect. One-story house with a clean front yard, trimmed hedges, neat rows of solar panels on the roof. The driveway was empty except for his black SUV. He opened the door right away when I rang the bell, like he'd been standing near it. He smiled, stepped aside, and let me in. Inside, the house was cool and quiet. No TV, no music. Just the soft hum of something electric running in the background. The living room was minimal. Gray couch, small coffee table, some kind of air purifier in the corner. He showed me around without much small talk. The kitchen had motion-triggered lights. The hallway lights dimmed or brightened depending on how far you were from the end. I followed him into each room while he explained how he designed airflow paths, so the whole place stayed at an even temperature without needing to crank the AC. I asked him how long it took to set all this up. He said, "About 2 years, not continuous. Just when I had time." That was the longest sentence he'd said all evening. He poured tea in the kitchen and we sat for a few minutes. I noticed he kept glancing at the hallway, like waiting for something. I tried to keep the conversation going, asked if he ever worked with builders or just solo contracts. He said he preferred to work alone. Less interference, he said. At one point, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, didn't answer, then stood up. Said he needed to check something in the basement. I nodded, and he walked down the hallway, opened a door, and went down a set of stairs. I stayed in the living room. The tea had gone lukewarm. I stood up, walked around a little, just out of boredom. I wasn't snooping, not really. Just looking. There was a hallway closet near the kitchen, half open. I pushed it the rest of the way to see if there were any extra napkins or maybe a towel. I had spilled a little tea on my sleeve. It was a narrow space, with shelves stacked with toolboxes, cables, and old circuit boards. But on the floor, pushed back behind a case of bottled water, was a duffel bag. I don't know why I pulled it out. Maybe because it looked newer than everything else. I unzipped it halfway. Inside were some clothes, a small bottle of shampoo, and a leather wallet. I opened the wallet and saw a driver's license with a woman's face. Early 30s, brown hair. Not me. Name I didn't recognize. There were also folded papers, insurance cards, a gym membership tag, receipts from a nearby grocery store. All with her name. All dated from this year. The photos weren't old. Nothing looked worn out or like it had been saved for sentimental reasons. I froze, holding the wallet, then put it back quickly and zipped the bag. I closed the closet door just as I heard the floorboards creak from the hallway. My heart jumped, but I kept my face calm and asked him casually, "Hey, what's that bag in the closet? Looks like a woman's stuff." Dan paused for half a second before answering. "Oh, that? Those are my mom's things. She moved out a while ago but left some stuff behind." He looked down as he spoke, then quickly turned and asked if I wanted to see how he integrated a ventilation shaft into the ceiling. It was such a sudden shift. It felt forced. I followed him, but every step felt heavier. He kept talking about the air filters and wiring, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about that face in the ID. I didn't recognize her, and the documents didn't look old at all. Something about his tone when he answered. It wasn't right. He looked tense, like he was trying to keep everything in control. I played along, nodded at his explanations, laughed when it seemed appropriate. But I was on edge. When I finally left, he walked me to my car, said he had fun and would message me later. I nodded and said thanks, then drove off. I didn't even turn on music. I just kept replaying the image of that wallet, those papers, and her face. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Who was she? Why was her stuff hidden like that? If it really was his mother's, why would there be a random gym card with a different last name? The next day at work, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was probably nothing, maybe just a cousin or someone. But after lunch, I sat in my car and typed her name from the ID into social media. A few accounts popped up, but none with enough info to be sure. I clicked through profiles, tried image search, but came up empty. I told myself again to drop it. People leave stuff at relatives' places all the time, but something about it kept digging into me. I stopped responding to Dan's messages for a few days. He didn't send many, just one or two, asking if I was busy. I replied once, said work was hectic. He didn't push. That made me even more uneasy. A week later, I was scrolling through a local Facebook group when I saw a post that made me stop cold. A woman named Amy had posted, "My friend Sarah has been missing for 2 weeks. She was last seen with a man named Dan, tall, quiet, works with smart homes. Please, if anyone knows anything, message me." There was a photo attached. It was her, the woman from the ID. I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. Same brown hair, same slight smile. The kind you see on someone who's not expecting the photo to be taken. I scrolled back to the post, read it 3 more times, then sent Amy a message. I didn't say much, just asked for more details about her friend. She replied within the hour. Her name is Sarah L. She met him through a dating app. They went on a few dates. Last thing she said was that she was going to see his house. Then nothing. Her phone went dead. Police haven't found anything. I told her I had seen documents with Sarah's name at someone's house. I described the ID, the bag, the house location. Amy was silent for a while, then just wrote, "That's her. 100%. I felt like my blood froze. I had been inside that house. I had tea there, walked through the rooms, and all that time, this missing woman's belongings were in the closet, like she had just stepped out and never came back. It didn't make sense. There was no trace of panic there, nothing out of place, just too perfect. I knew I couldn't just leave it alone. That night, I called the police. I didn't embellish anything, just told them what I saw, when I saw it, and what I'd learned from Amy. They asked questions, took down everything. They said they'd send someone to check it out and thanked me for calling. 3 days later, I got a message from Amy. They went to his house, searched the whole place, but they didn't find anything. Nothing that linked him directly to Sarah. She added that the neighbors said he left town. Packed up in the middle of the night, didn't even take all his things, just gone. I tried not to panic, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw that closet again. I saw the wallet, her photo. He knew I saw it. And still, he didn't stop me. That scared me more than anything. For weeks, I kept checking news updates. Nothing. No arrest, no further reports. Dan had disappeared, just like Sarah. The police said they couldn't hold him without evidence, and there wasn't enough in the house. Amy kept pushing, kept sharing Sarah's story online, but it faded in the news like they all do eventually. I posted everything I knew on forums, on social media, on Reddit. Screenshots of my messages with Amy, vague descriptions of the house, the city. I didn't want to post photos of Dan. I didn't have any, and I didn't want him to know I was involved if he ever resurfaced. But I wanted to warn people, especially women who date online, because Dan wasn't creepy or pushy. He was polite, quiet, smart. He built a house with hidden tech and perfect wiring. A house where someone had left their ID behind and never came back. Sometimes I wonder if he's in another city now. New house, new name, new app profile. Maybe smiling the same way, offering tea in a quiet kitchen, waiting for someone to ask about a bag in the closet. And I wonder if they'll walk out of that house alive. My name is Haley. I work as a waitress in a restaurant that turns into a bar at night. During the day, it's all about lunch specials and coffee refills. But after 6 p.m., the lights dim, and the regulars start ordering cocktails like clockwork. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays rent, and I like the rhythm. Nothing ever really changes. Same people, same music, same stories. I guess that's why I started looking for something different. Something a little outside the usual. I'd been reading about these online communities where people talk openly about adult relationships. More niche stuff, not just Tinder dates and hookups. There were forums and apps just for this, with rules, structure, and all sorts of safety guidelines. I joined one out of curiosity. The way people talked there, calm, respectful, organized. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt like people who took boundaries seriously. That's how I met Jaden. His profile stood out because it wasn't flashy. No shirtless selfies or vague bios. He described himself as experienced, respectful, detail-oriented. He messaged me first, asked about my interests, limits, comfort zones. It wasn't flirty, more like an interview. At first, that weirded me out a bit, but then it made sense. We talked for about 2 weeks, mostly chatting late at night after my shifts. He always circled back to consent. "There's no trust without boundaries," he wrote once. He also told me he'd been part of the scene for a few years and had been a mentor to newcomers before. That made him seem safe, like someone who'd seen a lot and wasn't reckless. I agreed to meet him in person. Public place, late afternoon. We met at this coffee shop halfway between our neighborhoods. I expected awkwardness, but he was calm, polite, clean. Looked me in the eye when he spoke. Asked if I felt okay with how things were going. We talked for 2 hours, and he didn't pressure me at all. I went home thinking maybe I'd finally found someone who actually understood what boundaries meant. It made me feel like I wasn't crazy for wanting to try something new, as long as I was doing it with the right person. The second time we met, it was at my place. I had just cleaned the apartment that morning. Sheets changed, candles out, trying to make it feel comfortable. He arrived right on time, holding a small black duffel bag. Said he brought a few things, all sanitized and wrapped individually. I asked to see, and he laid them out on a folded towel. Everything clean, simple, nothing extreme. Just cuffs, blindfold, soft rope. He explained what each thing was for, how it worked, and how I could back out any time. He reminded me of the safe word we agreed on, and asked me to say it out loud before we started, just to make sure I'd remember it under pressure. I was nervous, but I said it. He nodded, and we got started slowly. The first few times were light. He was attentive, pausing to check in every few minutes, watching my face more than anything else. The weird thing was, I never felt out of control. Not once. It was actually calmer than I expected, even clinical. He moved methodically, like he'd done this 100 times and didn't need to prove anything. Afterward, he cleaned everything, packed up, and sat with me for a bit while we drank water. Then he left. No pushing for more, no guilt tripping. Just a quick, text me if anything feels off later. After a few more sessions, things slowly started shifting. He brought new gear, things I didn't recognize. He still asked first, but it was more like, "You're ready for this now, right? Then, would you be okay with trying this?" I nodded, but the tone had changed. At one point, maybe the fourth time we met, he casually said, "You know, most people at this level don't really need a safe word anymore. It kind of holds you back." I didn't know how to respond. I just laughed a little, said something like, "I don't think I'm there yet." He smiled and said, "Sure, we'll take it slow." But then a few minutes later, when I hesitated at something, he paused and said, "See? That's the kind of moment where full trust means pushing past hesitation. You want to grow, right?" I didn't say anything. I think I just nodded again. Next time, he brought up the safe word before we even started. He said, "Let's agree to try this without the word tonight. If anything feels wrong, you can still speak up, but try not to use it automatically. I want to see how much you trust me." He made it sound like a challenge, like a next step in some process. I didn't want to seem like I wasn't ready, so I said okay. We did that twice. No safe word. He didn't do anything extreme, but he pushed harder. Less checking in, more controlling the pace. I was still able to stop things with regular words, but it didn't feel the same. He was moving fast now, like we were suddenly in phase 2 of some plan I hadn't agreed to. On the 6th visit, he didn't even mention the safe word. I asked if we were still doing the same setup. He just said, "You know how this works now. You're not new anymore." That night, he used straps I hadn't seen before. They were more rigid, harder to adjust once they were on. He worked quickly, not explaining things like he used to. At one point I asked, "Can you loosen this one a bit?" And he said, "It's supposed to feel snug. You're okay." I waited a few seconds and said, "No, really, it's cutting into my wrist." He stopped, looked at me, and then said, "You're fine. Trust me." Then he tightened the other one. The next time he came over, he said he wanted to try something more intense. He had this small metal tin with a candle inside, said it was special wax that melted at a low temperature. "It's perfectly safe," he said, lighting it on my kitchen counter. "Feels sharp at first, but it's more mental than physical. You'll see." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. We didn't talk about a safe word at all this time. He assumed I was past that. He set everything up like usual. The cuffs, the blindfold, the towel under me. Then he brought the candle over and started dripping it down my stomach. It burned. Not in a playful way, just real pain. I flinched hard and said, "Stop, that's too much." He paused for a second, then whispered, "Trust it. This is the part where you grow." I repeated myself, louder this time. "It hurts. I want to stop." He didn't answer, just kept moving, tilting the candle toward my thigh now. The drops hit fast and hard. I yanked against the cuffs, but he said, "You're okay. Your body's just reacting. Don't fight it." Then he leaned closer and tilted the candle near my face. I panicked and jerked my head back, but not fast enough. Hot wax splashed just above my cheekbone, then another drop landed near my right eye. The pain hit immediately, sharp and deep. My eye clamped shut, tears flooding out. I screamed. It wasn't a reaction. It was panic. "Get it off! Get it off!" I shouted, twisting under the restraints. He stopped finally, blowing out the candle like I'd just interrupted him mid-scene. His face didn't look scared, just annoyed. "You moved. I told you to stay still." I kept screaming. He stood there for a second, then grabbed his bag and started throwing everything into it. I was still tied down, still half blind, still crying. He didn't help. He didn't ask if I could see, just muttered, "You're making this worse than it is." I screamed again, "Call 911." But he didn't. He left. I managed to twist out of one cuff after a few tries, then stumbled to my phone, barely seeing through the blur. I called the ambulance myself. By the time they arrived, I was half-dressed, half-conscious, sitting on the floor and holding a wet towel to my eye. At the hospital, the doctors told me I had a corneal burn. They flushed my eye for what felt like hours, then wrapped it and gave me something for the pain. They said there'd be long-term damage, not total blindness, but I wouldn't see clearly from that eye again. I stayed overnight for observation. The next morning, a detective came to talk to me. I gave my statement, told them everything, from the chats to the first meeting to what happened that night. But nothing came of it. They said it was complicated. "Based on what you're describing, it sounds like there was ongoing consent." I told them I tried to stop, that I begged him to stop. But apparently, since I never used an exact safe word that night, and there was a camera recording, his camera, they had footage of me nodding along and not resisting for most of it. He'd been filming without telling me directly, and now it worked in his favor. "There's no clear indication of intent to harm," the detective said. "It's not a simple assault case." I sat there, holding the hospital papers, not even sure what to say. I lost part of my sight. I had burns on my face and chest. And he walked away clean because I didn't say one specific word at one specific time. They told me I could pursue civil charges, but it would be hard to prove malicious intent. It was like watching my own life fall apart while everyone else shrugged and said, "That's just how it goes sometimes." I was discharged 2 days later. My eye had to stay covered for weeks. The burns left scars, and the vision in my right eye stayed blurry. I couldn't go back to work right away. Even when I did, I couldn't handle the shifts like before. Couldn't read the orders fast enough. Couldn't see trays clearly. My boss said she understood, but I knew it was just a matter of time before the hours dried up. I started blaming myself for everything. For saying yes, for letting him in, for not stopping it earlier. But I also knew deep down that I'd been manipulated. Friends helped where they could. My co-workers started a fundraiser for medical bills. Some old friends from high school I hadn't heard from in years sent money, groceries, notes. But none of that changed the fact that I couldn't function the same way. I moved in with my aunt in the suburbs, just to be somewhere safe, away from my apartment and that whole city. Months passed. I started therapy, physical rehab. The doctors said some vision might return, but it never really did. I learned to manage. I got used to eye drops and headaches. I started reading articles about consent, about legal gray areas, about people who went through things like me and got ignored. I wasn't alone, but that didn't make it easier. I thought about speaking out. Maybe going to schools or community centers to talk about safety and boundaries. Not to scare people, but to warn them what happens when trust gets twisted. I wrote a few drafts of speeches. I even practiced one in front of the mirror. But I haven't done it yet. Maybe someday. Jaden, as far as I know, is still out there. Still on the same apps. Probably saying the same things. Using the same lines. I think about reporting him again, but I know what they'll say. He left without a scratch. I still wake up some nights with the burn tingling on my cheek, feeling like he's still standing over me, holding that candle. I'm 30 years old and work as an executive assistant at a company that sells agricultural equipment. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays well, and I like the routine. In my free time, I love taking long drives on the highway. There's something peaceful about watching the evening lights stretch across the road while music plays low in the background. It's how I clear my head. A few months ago, I decided to try a new dating app. It was one of those apps where people don't use last names, just first names and a short description. I wasn't really expecting much, just curious, I guess. I matched with a guy named Phil. He said he was a mechanic from a small town about an hour away. His profile said he liked fixing old cars and helping people. He had a photo of himself standing next to a pickup truck, wearing a worn blue jumpsuit. He looked solid, maybe in his late 30s, with a kind smile and strong arms. We started messaging and talked almost every day for a couple of weeks. He wasn't overly flirty or fake-sounding like some of the other guys I'd chatted with before. He was more down-to-earth, talked about his work, his routine, the people he helped out in his town. He said he lived alone, no kids, no pets. He liked the quiet. That appealed to me. He didn't push me for anything weird, didn't ask to video chat late at night, just kept the conversation steady and light. When we decided to meet, I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our towns, but he offered to drive to me instead. I said okay. He showed up on time, driving the same pickup from his photo. Up close, he looked like his pictures, broad-shouldered, buzz-cut, little lines around his eyes like he spent time outside. He had that kind of look that made you feel at ease, someone you'd trust to fix your brakes or help you move a couch. We talked over coffee for about an hour. He didn't check his phone once, just looked at me and listened. Said he liked hearing about my job, that he thought people like me kept the world running quietly in the background. I remember thinking that was a sweet thing to say, even if a little dramatic. After that, we saw each other a few more times. Quick dinners, short walks, mostly during the weekends. He never tried to rush things physically, which I appreciated. He told me he spent most of his evenings in his garage, working on old trucks people abandoned. Said he liked giving things a second life. He invited me once to come by and see his setup. Said he'd love to show me what he was working on. I said yes. He gave me his address, and I drove over on a Saturday morning. The town was small, mostly wide roads and quiet houses spaced far apart. His place was at the edge, a one-story house with a detached garage in the back. The garage door was open when I pulled up. He waved me in from under a lifted hood, wiping his hands with a rag. The inside of the garage smelled like oil and old metal. There were toolboxes lined neatly on one wall, a small fridge in the corner, and a bunch of license plates hung like decorations. He showed me a beat-up Dodge he was rebuilding, talked about it like it was an old friend. I mostly nodded, listened, asked a few questions. He seemed proud of the work. We stayed there for about 2 hours. At one point, he asked if I wanted a beer. I said no thanks. I still had to drive home. He didn't push, just nodded and kept working on the engine while we talked. Over the next few weeks, we kept seeing each other. Nothing intense, just casual visits. But then he started bringing up the idea of me moving in with him. Not right away, but soon. He said it was lonely out there by himself, that he liked having someone around who understood responsibility, who wasn't out partying or posting every second online. He said I was the kind of person he'd been hoping to find. At first, I thought he was just being sweet, but then he brought it up again, and again. I told him I couldn't just leave my job. I also had family I visited regularly, a niece I helped take care of. But he didn't drop it. He kept saying he could make things easier for me, that we could fix up the spare room into a home office, that the town was quiet and safe. He made it sound like I had nothing holding me back. We started having small arguments, not yelling or anything, just tense conversations. I told him it felt too fast, that we didn't know each other well enough for something that serious. He'd sigh and say things like, "I just don't see the point in waiting when something feels right." I said it didn't feel right to me, not yet. He got quiet after that. One evening, I dropped by his place after work. He didn't greet me at the door like he usually did. The garage door was closed. I knocked on the front door, and he opened it a few inches, just enough for his face to show. He said he wasn't feeling well, that maybe we could reschedule. His voice sounded flat, not like him. I said, "Okay," and left. But as I walked back to my car, I noticed something strange. His truck was parked out front, but it was backed in at an odd angle, almost like he was in a hurry when he parked. That was the last time I saw him face to face. A few days after that strange evening, I got a message on social media from a woman I didn't know. Her profile looked real. Family photos, posts going back years, nothing suspicious. She introduced herself politely and asked, "Do you know that he has a child and is actually married?" At first I had no idea who she meant. I asked, "Who are you talking about?" She replied with his real full name, which I hadn't known before. Then she sent a wedding photo. It was him, Phil, standing next to her in a suit, smiling, holding hands like any normal couple on their wedding day. My stomach dropped. I stared at the photo for a while. It looked recent. She messaged again. "I'm not trying to attack you. I just thought you deserved to know. You're not the first woman he's tried this with. He creates these new profiles, different names, different towns. He always says he wants a new life, says our marriage is falling apart, but he never actually leaves." My fingers went cold. I didn't respond right away. I just scrolled through her photos. There were pictures of him holding a toddler, helping decorate a Christmas tree, standing in front of that same garage. It didn't feel real. I kept thinking maybe it was a mix-up, a prank, or some bitter ex trying to ruin things. But when I checked the date stamp on the wedding photo, it was only 4 years ago. She sent another message. "You should be careful. He tells women to move in, makes them feel special, then flips when they push back. I don't know if he's dangerous, but he lies easily, constantly." I closed my laptop and just sat in silence. The room felt smaller, like I couldn't breathe right. I thought about the times he'd said he was tired or busy, the times he hadn't answered his phone, the weird way he acted that last visit. Everything started fitting together in ways I didn't want to believe. The next day, I drove back to his town. I didn't tell him I was coming. I just needed to see him face to face, to ask him myself. When I got there, his truck was parked outside like usual. I knocked. He opened the door without any surprise, like he'd been expecting me. I said, "We need to talk." He stepped aside and let me in without a word. I asked him directly, "Is it true? Are you married? Do you have a kid?" At first, he shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Who told you that?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him. After a moment, he looked down and rubbed his face. Then he said, "Okay, yes, but we're not really together anymore. It's just technical. We live separate lives." I asked, "So why are you asking women to move in with you? If your wife and kid are still around? What exactly is this supposed to be?" He walked across the room, like he was trying to put distance between us. "It's not what you think," he said. "She's always been the problem. Controlling, nagging, cold. I just want to find someone who understands me. Someone I can build something real with." I didn't say anything. I just watched him pace. He kept talking. "I'm not a bad guy. You know me. You've seen me work. You've seen how I live. I didn't mean to lie. I just didn't know how to explain it all. You wouldn't have given me a chance if you knew up front." I said, "You're right. I wouldn't have." Then I picked up my bag and left. When I got home, I blocked his number, unmatched him from the app, and deleted every message we'd exchanged. I didn't respond to his calls or his emails. He sent a few over the next couple of weeks. One just said, "Please." Another was longer, talking about how he felt alone, how he didn't want to lose something good because of the past. I didn't reply to any of it. 2 months passed. I started to feel normal again. Then I got another message from his wife. She said, "Just thought you should know, 2 more girls reached out. He's still doing it, still creating new names, still telling the same story." She sounded tired, not angry, just done. She said he was probably never going to stop, that he'd always find someone new to convince, someone looking for a change. That was the hardest part to swallow, that I wasn't the only one, that it wasn't even personal. I was just another step in a pattern he'd been repeating for years. I felt sick, like my time, my trust, none of it had mattered. He didn't care who I was, just that I fit the kind of person who might say yes to starting over. I booked a short trip out of town, just a few days somewhere quiet. I needed space to think, to forget the garage, the town, his face. I walked along empty trails, kept my phone off most of the time, and tried to let my mind breathe. When I came back, the first thing I did was delete the dating app for good. I didn't want to play that game anymore. Not like that. Sometimes I still think about him. Not in a sad way. More like trying to understand how someone can live that way. Lie so easily. Start these fake connections just to see how far they can go. And I think about his smile. The one that seems so genuine. And his hands always stained with grease. But now I know what was really behind it. Not just a mechanic in a small town. Not a man starting fresh. Just another lie waiting for someone to believe it. When I opened the app again, I didn't expect anything new. Just boredom, maybe a few awkward conversations. But then I saw his message. It was different. No "hey" or cheesy pickup lines. Just a quote from Rilke. Then a poem I hadn't read before. Then something about how books shape our way of seeing the world. It wasn't just interesting. It felt intentional. I replied out of curiosity, and we started talking. A lot. His name was Mikhail. He spoke slowly, carefully, even in text. He shared verses from Akhmatova and Mandelstam, asked if I'd ever cried reading a book. He told me he lost his wife a year ago in a car accident. She was the love of his life. Since then, he said, he'd been hollow inside. He wasn't trying to flirt, just connect. He said he missed having someone who could talk about books like they were real people. I don't usually open up quickly, but he made it easy. He didn't ask anything inappropriate. Just questions like, "What book changed your life?" Or, "Have you ever read something that made you feel less alone?" His messages would come in the evening, long and thoughtful. One night, we were still messaging at 3 a.m. I remember I was in bed with one earbud in, reading his words and listening to Chopin like he'd suggested. He told me about his wife's accident, said he was driving. There was black ice. He lost control. She died instantly. The guilt was unbearable, he wrote. I didn't know what to say, so I just told him I was sorry, that it wasn't his fault. He replied that it helped, just having someone acknowledge the pain. I didn't know him well, but something about his words felt heavy, real. By the end of the week, it felt like we'd known each other much longer. He asked if I wanted to meet, not in a bar or cafe, but at this small bookstore he said was near my side of the city. It was a quiet place I liked too, run by an older couple, filled with secondhand shelves and the smell of old paper. I said yes. The weather was cold but dry the day we met. He was already waiting by the door of the shop, holding 2 takeaway coffees. He looked older than I expected, mid-30s maybe, but well put together. Simple coat, scarf, worn leather gloves. His voice was calm, almost soft. We walked slowly through the aisles, sipping coffee, pulling out random books and talking about them. There wasn't any awkward silence. He made eye contact without staring, listened when I talked, laughed a little when I made a joke about how I never finished Dostoevsky. We sat down on a bench by the window, still inside the shop. He told me how hard mornings were, how he still reached for the other side of the bed sometimes. He looked down a lot when he spoke, like it physically hurt to say the words. I didn't interrupt, just nodded. I asked what kind of books his wife liked. He smiled a bit and said, "She used to make me read poetry out loud even when I didn't want to." There was nothing strange about him, just grief. It was obvious in the way he stood, like something was pressing on him all the time. I started thinking, maybe I could help. Maybe this was someone worth knowing. Not in a romantic way, but as someone who needed another person to remind him that he's still alive. After that, he messaged more often. No pressure, just short notes. A line from a book, a photo of his coffee and some old paperback on a table. 2 days later, he sent me a long message. Said he hadn't written something like that in months. It was about how I reminded him that not all connections were gone, that he felt like he'd known me longer than just a week, that maybe life didn't stop completely when she died. The words were kind, almost lyrical. It was dramatic, yes, but not over the top. Not fake. At least it didn't read that way. I read it twice, then sent back a short message. I said I was glad he wrote, that it meant something to me too. Nothing more. The next morning, he sent a photo of a park bench near his house. He said he used to sit there with her, but now it was just him. There was no caption, just the image. Empty bench, cloudy sky, bare trees behind it. A few weeks later, I was reading a blog about emotional manipulation in online relationships. One of the posts linked to a forum where people shared stories about past partners or dangerous connections. I clicked through out of boredom, but then something caught my eye. A username that looked almost identical to his, only 1 letter off. The writing style was eerily familiar. The way he phrased things, the vocabulary, even the punctuation. The user was venting about his wife not understanding him, saying she twisted everything, and there were posts about how to hide signs of aggression. One thread had him asking how to deal with a partner who provokes you, followed by people warning others to stay away. I sat up straight and started reading through his post history. It went back years. Some entries mentioned a runaway wife, someone who left without warning and made him look like a monster. But in other threads, he casually described methods for controlling someone in a relationship, never in outright terms, but it was there, in the subtext. I was frozen. I scrolled back to our messages. The grief, the sorrow, the poetic language. It suddenly felt fake, too polished, like it was written for an audience. I copied a few sentences from his forum posts and compared them to what he'd sent me. Same voice, same phrases. He hadn't lost his wife. She'd left him, ran away. The reality hit hard. This whole thing was a lie. The tragedy, the guilt, the vulnerability, all part of a character he played. My hands were shaking as I went deeper. He wasn't just someone with a complicated past. He was dangerous. The next day, I decided to ask him directly. Not accusing, just testing. I brought up the accident again, asked how it happened, if he had any photos from that day or from before it. He paused for a long time before answering. Said he didn't like to dwell on those memories. I pressed a little more, casually. That's when he started getting things mixed up. First, he said it was in January, then February. Said it happened in the city, then later mentioned a highway. I didn't argue, just let him talk. That was the confirmation I needed. His story was full of holes. It didn't match up, and every time I asked a follow-up, he acted more confused. I don't remember much, he wrote. It's all a blur. But earlier he described it in perfect detail. The disconnect was too big to ignore. I started digging into his online footprint. Not just the forum, social media too. He had old, half-deleted accounts. One of them had public posts from around the same time he claimed his wife died. But instead of grief, there were angry rants. He called her crazy, accused her of ruining his life. He never mentioned a car accident. No mourning posts, no tributes, just bitterness. I sat with that for a while. I'd let this man into my thoughts, my time, my world. I thought I'd met someone who understood loneliness, loss. But what I'd really met was a skilled manipulator who used those emotions to create a mask. There was no tragedy, at least not the kind he claimed. The only real tragedy was how many people might fall for it. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to argue or explain. So I wrote him a single message. I know you've been lying. Please don't contact me again. He replied almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting. At first, he tried to deny everything. Said I was being paranoid. Then he switched tactics, accused me of spying on him. You've been watching me like some stalker, he wrote. Is this how you treat people who open up to you? I didn't reply. He kept sending messages, first angry, then pleading. Said I misunderstood everything, that I was the only person who'd ever really listened to him. Said he'd made mistakes, but never meant to hurt anyone. I blocked him on everything, deleted the app, turned off notifications on my phone for a while. I don't think he'll try to reach out again, but it still scares me how close I got to believing him. He told his stories so well. I cried reading some of them. I remember one night, I even read one of the poems he sent me out loud, trying to feel what he felt. Now I know it was all rehearsed, practiced. Sometimes I think about him, how good he was at making pain sound like beauty. How many others he's probably messaged with the same lines, same tragic past. He didn't need to threaten anyone. He didn't have to. He used sympathy like a weapon. I was lucky. I got out early, saw through it before it got worse. But I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't checked that forum, if I'd gone to his apartment, if I'd let my guard down one more time. People like him, they don't always scream danger. Sometimes they quote poetry, sip coffee slowly, and talk about grief like it's sacred. But behind all that, they're still the same. I'll never forget that. My name's Josh. I'm 41, an architect, and after my divorce last year, I decided it was time to reset everything. I stayed in the same city, just moved to a quieter neighborhood outside downtown. The kind with low buildings, coffee shops that close at 8, and joggers everywhere. My work kept me busy. I design residential buildings mostly, but personal life was kind of empty. I wasn't looking for anything serious, not after the way my marriage ended. Still, it got lonely. I downloaded a couple of dating apps, tried chatting with a few people, but most conversations felt forced. Then I matched with Lisa. She was upfront from the start, said she wasn't looking for love, just gentle company in exchange for some financial support. It was blunt. I didn't know how to respond at first. Part of me thought it felt wrong. But then I looked through her photos again. She was beautiful. Mid-20s, smart eyes, kind of sharp but warm smile. She didn't pretend. No long fake stories or manipulations. Just said it straight. I told her I wasn't sure, and she said, "Think about it. We meet up once or twice a week, have dinner, talk, spend time. I don't lie, I don't cheat. You get peace, and I get stability." I didn't reply right away. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The honesty got to me. So 2 days later, I messaged her and said I'd try. Our first meeting was at a Thai place near the river. She wore a beige coat, her hair in a bun, barely any makeup. We talked for almost 2 hours. She mostly talked about her work. She helped manage a small vintage store downtown, and her roommate, who she said was always late with rent. I mentioned some of my current projects, but she didn't seem too interested in that. It wasn't rude, more like she had a habit of keeping things surface level. After that, we met about once or twice a week. Sometimes dinner, sometimes she came over. She'd stay for a couple hours, then leave before midnight. No overnight stays, no mess, no drama. We texted in between, but never anything deep. I paid her rent directly. It was a small one-bedroom in an older building, nothing fancy. We agreed she wouldn't see anyone else. I asked her about it, and she looked at me and said, "I said I wouldn't. That's enough." I nodded. It wasn't love, but it was something. I liked having someone there, someone to talk to. Sometimes we watched movies. Sometimes we just sat on the couch. She'd lie back with her feet under her and scroll through her phone while I did some work on my laptop. It felt normal, not romantic, not fake, just calm. For a while. Then she started asking for more. Nothing huge at first. One week she said her fridge broke, asked if I could help cover a repair guy. Another time she said she was having headaches, needed to see a specialist but didn't have insurance. The amounts weren't crazy. $150 here, $200 there. I sent the money without arguing. She always said thank you. Called me the kindest guy she'd met. Said she felt safe around me. It made me feel like I was doing something good. Even if I knew, deep down, she was probably stretching the truth. One night, she texted me saying her apartment had a leak and her landlord was ignoring her. She sent a photo of a wet patch on the wall and asked if I could help her move to a better place. I hesitated. I didn't reply that night. The next morning, she messaged again. Just a short, "Sorry I asked." Ignore it. That made me feel worse, so I offered to cover part of her deposit if she found something within a certain budget. A week later, she sent me the listing of a studio in a newer complex near the university. Rent was higher, but she said it was safer, and I agreed to help. After she moved, things seemed better for a few weeks. She looked more relaxed. She started dressing more casually when she came over. Less makeup, more jeans and sweaters. I liked that. But then she started with the extra requests again. Said she needed dental work. Then said her roommate had left her with unpaid utility bills. Each time she explained it like it was urgent. I didn't always believe it. But I sent the money. By that point, I was paying most of her rent, and about every other week, she'd have some new expense. I didn't track the total, but it was more than I'd planned when we started. Still, she kept seeing me regularly. She kept the same tone, the same routine. I told myself that meant something. Then she started getting distant. Not pulling away exactly, but less present. She'd glance at her phone more during our time together, step outside for short calls. I asked once who it was, and she said, "Just someone from work." I didn't ask again. That weekend, she asked for money to replace her laptop. Said hers died and she needed one for her store's accounting. I asked to see it, just to understand the issue, but she said she already gave it to someone to try and fix it. I transferred $600 anyway. The next time she came over, I noticed her nails were freshly done and her bag looked new. I didn't say anything. I just watched her scroll on her phone while sitting on the far end of the couch. She looked up once and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. She kept scrolling. About 2 months later, Lisa started bringing a friend around. At first, it was casual. She'd text me and say, "Hey, is it okay if my friend swings by too? She's been feeling down." I didn't think much of it. The girl's name was Mira, or at least that's what she said. Dark hair, louder than Lisa, and always laughing too much at nothing. They acted like best friends, constantly whispering and showing each other stuff on their phones. At first, it really was just like casual hangouts. Mira would come with Lisa, we'd have drinks or watch a movie. But after a few visits, things shifted. Mira started talking more directly to me, sometimes making little comments about money. One night she said, "You're lucky Lisa has you. I wish I had someone to help me out. I can't even afford my meds this month." She said it half laughing, like a joke. I didn't reply, but the message was there. Lisa looked at me with this soft expression, kind of apologetic, like she already knew what Mira was doing, but didn't want to stop her. A few days later, Lisa texted me and said Mira was going through something serious. Some issue with her landlord or bills, I don't remember. And if I could help, even a little, she'd be grateful. She added, "She's like a sister to me. I'm scared she'll have to leave the city." I said no. Twice. Politely, but clearly. I said I already had too many obligations, and I couldn't get involved in someone else's problems. After the second time, Mira started messaging me directly. Not on the app, not through Lisa, but somehow she found my number. Her first message said, "I know what kind of arrangement you have with Lisa. It's not hard to guess." I ignored it. Then she wrote again, "What would your job think if they found out?" That one made me stop cold. I stared at the message for a long time. My position wasn't exactly public-facing, but still, if someone made enough noise, it could ruin my career. I work with investors, contractors, planning commissions. Even a rumor could cause damage. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to go through a whole investigation over some twisted version of the truth. So I sent her $300. She said thanks, with a smiley face. I felt sick about it, but I thought it would end there. It didn't. A week later, another message. "Still need help. Please don't make me do something drastic." I didn't answer right away. Later that night, Lisa called. She said Mira was stressed, maybe saying things she didn't mean, but she was in a very dark place. I told Lisa this had to stop. She said, "Just once more. She's desperate." I sent another $200. That's when things really turned. Mira kept asking for more every few days. She started threatening to send emails to my workplace. Said she had messages, screenshots, proof of everything. Lisa didn't even deny it. She just kept saying, "I know it's hard, but she's not well." At some point, I realized Lisa wasn't just watching this happen. She was part of it. Maybe not the ringleader, but not innocent either. I told her I wouldn't give another dollar, that this was extortion, and I was done. The next day, Mira sent me a voice note. Her tone was different, cold. "We can say you forced us," she said. "You think anyone will believe you? We have recordings, messages. We'll say you paid us to do things we didn't want to do. Think that won't stick?" I didn't respond. I just sat there, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking. I hadn't done anything wrong, not legally, but the way they framed it, it could look bad. If they edited something or cut the right parts from voice messages, it could turn ugly fast. That night, I found a lawyer. A guy I knew through a friend, not cheap, but solid. I showed him everything: texts, voice messages, even the old app chats. He took notes quietly. Then he said, "Okay, first, don't reply to them anymore. Second, we back everything up." We made full backups of all the conversations. Every time Lisa called me kind, every message where she suggested meeting up, every payment she requested with explanations. We pulled voice messages too. In one of them, Lisa actually joked, "This setup works great for both of us." Another one had Mira saying, "If we play this right, you can move to a better place." The lawyer helped me draft a formal cease and desist. We sent it by email and physical mail, both to Lisa and Mira. The tone was legal and cold, stating clearly that their behavior constituted blackmail and any further contact would result in a defamation lawsuit. We didn't make threats, just laid out the facts. After that, everything went quiet. No more texts, no calls. They disappeared from the app. Lisa moved out of her apartment. Landlord said she left mid-lease, no forwarding address. Mira vanished too. I figured they were off looking for someone else to target. I never told anyone from work. I never had to. But for weeks after, I checked my email constantly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It never did. Now, when I think back, I don't even feel angry, just tired. I wanted connection, something simple. Instead, I walked right into a setup. I should have seen it earlier. The signs were there, the vague answers, the sudden emergencies, the friend who showed up too conveniently. Since then, I've stayed away from that kind of thing. No apps, no arrangements. I'm still alone, but at least I can sleep without waiting for a new threat to land in my inbox. Better that than being dragged through another mess like that again.